This video is the Definitive Guide Series Volume 1. This is over 6 hours of incredibly powerful and important information if you want to scale your business, especially with Facebook ads. Now you can choose to watch it from beginning to end, or you can go down below and check out all of the chapters. I've broken out every single talking point so that you can skip ahead to what's most valuable to you. So whether you want to go cover to cover or choose your own adventure, I hope you really enjoy this because I am super proud of it. And this is massive. Now welcome to the definitive guide to how Facebook ads actually work. How does an ad actually work? What is a Facebook ad? We're going to dissect this down to how post IDs function, how Facebook actually measures everything that happens within that post ID and the web page you're actually promoting and not the one on your site, plus how that actually turns into targeting so that you never need to worry about bidding models or audiences ever again, and ultimately how dynamic ads function so that you can understand why if you're not currently using dynamic ads, you are 100% not setting yourself up for success. So we're going to dive into all of that right here, right now. Definitive guide to how Facebook ads actually work. Let's go. But first, I just want to say this. Thank you very much. I know you could be anywhere on the internet right now, and I'm going to make sure the next half hour is 100% worth your time. If you need more help, go to links.facebookdisruptor.com, sign up for everything. Don't forget to subscribe, ring that bell. Let's go. So first thing, post IDs. So every time you make an ad, Facebook assigns that ad a post ID. Now, really what this is, that is Facebook's way of designating the file. Where is it on Facebook's website? Because your post ID is actually a web page. If you ever noticed the post ID of your ad, it is facebook.com / a bunch of numbers. That's your page ID. And then it'll say posts or videos or something else. And then another / and another long string of numbers. That is the post ID. Every ad you make is actually a web page. Now, what Facebook is doing when they make this web page is they are measuring the click-through rate, the bounce rate, the stickiness, the engagement rate, how likely people are to positively experience with that, and ultimately every downstream metric that you might use on CRO for your own web page and customer journey. Facebook is doing that for every single post, for every single ad that ever gets made, whether it's an organic post or not. And you have to remember, the Facebook news feed is really just a collection of these posts. The Facebook news feed is just a media-rich version of the Google search. So it is just a bunch of web pages that you can scroll through. Anytime you make any post on Instagram or Facebook, that's how it works. And the news feed is just this collation of all of these web pages. So when Facebook is looking at what happens, do people respond positively, right? Do they scroll through a carousel? Do they watch a video? Do they read an image? Do they hit like? Do they share? Do they comment? Do they read the comments section? What are people doing when you show them this web page? How likely are they to see that web page and then leave Facebook right away? How likely are they to, when they see that web page, engage in some way and then come back to Facebook potentially if they leave, or stick around on Facebook for much longer because they were shown that content? What is the correlation to a positive user experience, which is ultimately Facebook's business model, and the content that we are making, the post IDs that we are putting out there? Now, Facebook is ultimately also seeing how people behave and then using that information to choose who else to show your content to. Because remember, even if it's not an ad, if it's just an organic post or maybe an Instagram reel, or a TikTok or YouTube short or Pinterest idea pin. Ultimately, these optimized CPM environments are saying who likes this, who else is eligible to see it, And what happens if we show it to them? And then using that information of how everybody has responded, for instance, how you have responded to content over the last 10, 15 years that you've been on Facebook, what images, what videos, what words make you respond positively or negatively, what types of content, what topics of conversation do you engage with in a way that is desirable for their business model and not a liability to their business model? And based on that, they're going to show you more content that is like that, in which you are going to have a positive user experience. That's why even if two people had the exact same user experience on Facebook, followed the exact same pages, once they start to behave a little bit differently, even if it's not on Facebook, because Facebook is also seeing all of your credit card activity, all the pages that you're on outside of Facebook, all of the content, all of the things that you're doing on your phone. Because remember, you probably don't log out of the Facebook app if you have it on your phone. You're probably not logging out of the Instagram app when it's on your phone. So it's tracking everything that you're doing, all the places that you've been, and collating all of that information in the algorithm to figure out what you want to see. If those two people had everything the exact same, except they didn't live the exact same life, and maybe one person went to one building and somebody went to another website, and they traveled in different directions, they're going to see a different user experience. Even more than that, when we bring ads into the environment, once you start to stop and look at ads, click on ads, or ignore them, that environment, that user experience, that Facebook newsfeed is going to continue to evolve rapidly. Every time you swipe up to see a refresh on that feed, it is ultimately creating a new user experience. Now, why this is really, really important is because it ultimately breaks down into some fundamentals that we need to understand as marketing advertisers. The first of those being, if we are a liability to somebody's bottom line, in this case, Facebook's bottom line as a business owner, then we have to understand that that's not going to help us reach good people. So if your ad is very buy now, or if your ad is maybe immature, or if your ad is in some way either lacking in data or ultimately not presenting a user experience that Facebook can easily present to somebody else to give them a positive interaction and ultimately meet Facebook's business goals, then your ad is a liability to their business model and they will charge you a higher CPM. I've been seeing a lot of conversation lately around CPMs of $50, $100. And understand that this is a direct ramification of content being made that is not something that people are responding positively to. Moreover, if you are asking Facebook to deliver you business results that it does not have the data to give you, if you're not out of the learning phase, if you're running a conversion campaign on $50 a day to sell something that's $100 and you're seeing wicked high CPMs, maybe it's because there's nobody for Facebook to know with high confidence is going to see your content positively. And as a result, the other people where Facebook does have more data, where content may have been designed to improve the estimated action rate, they're going to get higher quality impressions. So when that user is swiping, what are they going to see? And these higher quality impressions tend to come when somebody's on the edge of making a purchase, picks up their device. What is that first impression that they're seeing? How likely, like if your ad gets shown only when somebody's 30 minutes into their Instagram news feed, only when somebody's 15, 20 minutes into their reels, only when somebody's been on Facebook for the 8th time today, you're getting lower quality inventory because your web page that you've made on Facebook, remember, when you're making a Facebook post, you're just basically coding a web page. That experience is less desirable for people. Now, if you've been reading the tea leaves here, you're also noticing that this gets down to another fundamental truth. and that Facebook ads do the targeting. There is no benefit to using Facebook ads to audiences to improve your AOV. There's no correlation. There's no correlation between LTV and a custom audience or an interest group or some detailed targeting. As a matter of fact, you are more likely to see less stable, less desirable, lower incremental lift when you are using detailed targeting instead of letting that ad go out unabated and be shown to all of the people that that ad should be shown to. Because remember, Facebook has looked at the click-through rate, the bounce rate, the stickiness, the engagement rate, how well people respond to that content versus some other option. And because of that, Facebook is choosing who else to show it to. Now, organically, this is the people that are following you, or the people that have liked your page, or the people that are in your group. What are they seeing? We also see very aggressively, and something that TikTok moved forward more aggressively than anyone, taking what YouTube was doing beforehand and pushed the needle to the 10,000th degree. And Facebook is getting a lot better at it, where you're seeing reels from accounts that you've never seen before. But because of all of the other content you've engaged with, Facebook thinks you might like to see this. And that's why you could have 100 followers and get a reel, get 1 million views. It's not that your 100 followers watched them, all that many times. It's that you were shown to way more people. In the same way that that reach, that view count, that engagement is a meritocracy on the content, the CPMs that you pay with your ads are the exact same type of conversation. If you make content and make ads and produce post IDs that people want to see in their newsfeed, that they engage positively with, that ultimately meets Facebook's business objectives, you are going to see lower and lower CPMs, because the CPM is ultimately a tax on your business relationship with Facebook. And what this really means is every time you pay extra for detailed targeting, because remember, all detailed targeting costs extra. When you pay extra money to restrict and prevent those ads from being shown to everybody that wants to see it, what you're ultimately doing is forcing those ads to be shown to a larger number of people that don't necessarily want to respond positively to it, because you said, out of this 50,000 person or 5 million person audience, I want to make sure that you're showing it with this dollar amount. Now, ultimately, that ad at broad is going to run unrestricted. Every impression that is good for that ad will be delivered, and you are going to win auctions that are far more desirable for your ad account, for your business, ultimately for the bottom line of whatever company that you're running ads for or yourself. And because you're not forcing bad impressions on people, you are allowing Facebook to create better user experiences. So you are, one, being more aligned with Facebook so that you don't have to worry about necessarily getting CPMs that are over $40, $50, $100. That's not going to happen when you use something like this. Also, you're providing greater incremental lift to the rest of your business, because instead of just focusing on this small group of people and paying way more to reach them, you can reach this much bigger group of people for a lot cheaper. And ultimately, that's going to help with your search volume. That's going to help with your email volume. That's going to help with the reach that your TikTok videos get. That's going to help with your email open rate, because you're reaching a higher quality of people at a higher volume for a lower cost. Now, these are simple, basic business economics. These aren't arguable points. Some folks say, well, broad doesn't work for me. My reaction to that is, you haven't tested ads that work at broad. You've only been able to make things work in a small little silo. And ultimately, if your business only works when you can't grow it, how good is your situation to begin with. If you have to rely on lookalike audiences and interest groups that pretty heavily overlap with the data set that you already have, and you're not growing the size of the pie by reaching a whole bunch of new people, then at some point, aren't you just basically working really hard to prevent the growth that you're looking for? And this is one reason why we don't use targeting audiences. Because also, and there's way more videos you can dive into on my channel about this stuff, way more podcasts, way more content, but audiences don't work like you think they do. Remember, an interest group is full of just as many people that feel negatively about that topic as those that feel positively. And 1/3 of that audience is actually there by mistake, because the interest group technology is a decade old. It was invented by Facebook to bring Google advertisers onto the platform 10 years ago. It was introduced in 2012. How good do you think 10-year-old technology is in a rapidly changing digital marketplace? Especially when half of those people are in that interest group because they don't like something. And if 1/3 of the people, even before you start, shouldn't even be there, that means 2/3 of every dollar that you could potentially spend, 2/3 of that entire group is actually bad for you. So if that audience is, say, 3 million people, there's maybe 1 million people that your ad should even be shown to. And now, hopefully, your post ID, the overlap of the people that post ID where Facebook wants to show it to, because remember, Facebook is deciding who wants to see this and who doesn't. Basically, every ad makes its own lookalike audience. Again, that is an analogy and a hard fact. Not arguable. Anybody that disagrees with it, fine, you're wrong, but you can have that opinion. That's fine. I've worked with the engineering department. This is literally how the product was designed. And Facebook has been telling us this for a decade. And everybody ripping off Facebook literally uses the exact same model to grow. TikTok is literally that exact same thing built to grow on that exact same principle. Create content, get data on who likes it, show it to more people who are likely to like it. Show it to more people that look like those that responded positively. Every ad is making its own look-alike audience. We literally just established that in an inarguable, hard data, objective fact function. So we can move on from that conversation. My point here is, if that available audience that you are using, if the overlap, if the Venn diagram of the ads lookalike audience doesn't have a lot of overlap with that other 1 million people, you are spending a lot of time and effort and investing a lot of impressions to tell Facebook that you don't give a damn about their business model. And your CPMs are going to go up. Now, you're going to get some wins. And look, where there is an overlap is great. And maybe you get really solid performance right away. But is it scalable? Is that somebody that is incremental to your business? Knowing that broad or lookalikes or interest groups, literally every single impression available on Facebook is ultimately still a retargeting impression, because Facebook has determined that you want to see this content because of other behavior that you've taken, other websites you've been to, other words that you've used, other content that you've engaged with. Even if it is impression number one for your business, that impression is a retargeting ad to somebody else's journey. So with all of that being said, if you are dramatically reducing the scope of who you're allowing that ad to see by eliminating the large majority of the people that are in that ad's own lookalike audience, by restricting it down to just the people in the lookalike audience that you've defined, or in the interest group that you've defined, or the retargeting audience that you've defined, When you've paid extra to make it way more difficult for that ad to reach good impressions and ultimately deliver Facebook's business model, which puts you in a good relationship that sets you up for long-term success, when you have paid extra to do worse quality work and you win by getting sales, my argument is this. One, is that sustainable and scalable? The answer is always no. Number two, would that person have bought anyway? Is it incremental? Are you using branded search and bottom of the funnel retargeting and email and influencer and working on organic? Do you need to do all of that stuff? Or more importantly, instead of introducing 1,000 new people or 10,000 new people to the business, was it really a good investment to make sure that one person that was going to buy tomorrow still buys tomorrow? What is the opportunity cost of making your Facebook ad look good because you don't understand how the post ID makes an audience? And ultimately, when you pay extra to make success more difficult, does that grow your business? Now, objectively speaking, the answer to that is no. So we can extrapolate from that very simple conversation that using targeting audiences, bad idea. Full stop. There's no use for them. You can get good results today. You can make Facebook look good, but ultimately the business will suffer because you're chasing vanity instead of performance. And if you're not building for the environment that curates good performance, ultimately, you're going to struggle because you don't understand how Facebook works. Now, the last thing that I wanted to cover here, because I think it's incredibly important, is dynamic ads. Every single ad account should be built on the back of dynamic ads. Again, sort of an opinion, but we're going to back that up with objective facts. And I'm going to struggle to find a way to prove that that's not what you should be doing. It's been years, hundreds of millions of dollars, hundreds of ad accounts, dozens of examples, people from, dozens of countries and 6 different continents, folks that I've had conversations with, and people that I've trained, students and clients of mine. This is a hard fact for every single one of them. Dynamic ads are something you should be using. And instead of trying to undermine, well, I don't use dynamic ads for my creative testing, and I'm going to go build post IDs, and well, I already have all this stuff. Let's throw all of the bad advice that worked in 2017 before the Power 5 was introduced. Let's throw all of the guru agency, like I'm searching for vanity metrics to prove my value instead of actually growing your business because I run an ad agency and I don't give a damn about your bottom line. Let's throw all of that out the window. And let's just start real data. Let's have a real conversation about data. Let's start that. When you make a dynamic ad using dynamic creative, remember how a post ID collates all the information? In a dynamic creative, that dynamic creative ad is the post ID. And now every element of that web page is dynamically responding to that impression, which means that one post ID is actually collecting information from every permutation of ad that is built within that dynamic ad. So to put this a different way, you could build 20 individual ads to try out to see what happens with 5 different images and 4 different headlines with your one primary text. Okay, that's 20 different ads. Now you can try that to run the scientific method across all of it, and maybe you're even doing something like running ABO to make sure every ad gets the exact same spend and whatever to try to control for this scientific process. Well, let's really dive into what you're doing. You are making 20 different web pages that don't talk to each other, that are competing against each other in every auction. Odds are the vast majority of them are not good. Maybe there's 2 or 3 of them that are desirable. But because you're trying to get a scientific read on all of the data, forgetting the fact that spend is a meritocracy because Facebook is built on the back of understanding customer journey, so we don't need to do that type of testing. That's not how it works. Then you are investing more heavily in losses than in wins. You're also investing a lot of impression share. The majority of the money that you spend is into an asset that you're not going to use again. So you are investing heavily in disposable assets of no value on the hope that the assets that do work, one, that you're able to identify them, two, that you're able to replicate their success, and three, that you're able to pay off for all of the losses just to break even. Now, when you think about it in that way, that's a pretty terrible way of running a business. In fact, no real business runs like that at scale. That's just playing the lottery, bad for business. Now, moving forward, let's dive into one or two other things about dynamic ads. Instead of competing with each other at every level, now, if we were to instead put all of those elements into one dynamic creative, now that one single post ID, that one web page that has dynamic elements within it, is curating all of the data from everyone to create the best user experience. And then we can extract the post IDs from that by basically seeing an itemized list of permutation by estimated action rate by hitting the Facebook post with comments preview and seeing what out of all of these actually meets Facebook's business objectives. Then we can index that against where did the spend go, what performance do we like, is this test even good? And we can develop high confidence assets built on the back of every bit of investment. So instead of setting 90 cents of every dollar on fire and then hoping that that 1 10-cent investment where we got lucky pays for everything else, we can say that every penny informed the data set of the actual post ID that we're running with. And now on day one, it's launching on the back of all of the work that we've done instead of in spite of all of the work that we've done. Trying to put this in one other way, let me be more obtuse with this and give a real world example. When you make 20 different ads, think about it like this. You're hiring 20 different salespeople that never talk to each other, that are going after the exact same set of leads, often retargeting those leads with each other. So you unleash all of these people to knock on doors in a neighborhood. You're going to have one house be knocked on by 4 or 5, 10 of those salespeople. When one of those salespeople gets the sale, is it because they're the best one or because they were the 10th time somebody answered the door? How pissed off am I going to be at your business because every single day I'm getting hit on my door by 2 or 3 of your salespeople and I don't want to buy? The vast majority of people are getting really pissed off at you. But to be fair, that's sort of the industry standard way of running ads, which is horrible. It makes no sense. When you actually break it down, it's what you're doing. There's no defense to that logic. It doesn't work. Instead, dynamic ads would say you're going to have one salesperson that knocks on every door that knows about how that person wants to be communicated to, and instead curates their sales pitch to meet that person's needs, to give them the best chance of positively embracing seeing that salesperson. Now, yes, that one salesperson is going to be smarter. And yes, that one salesperson might hit on a few things early that work and try to replicate that. And yes, that one salesperson isn't necessarily going to tell you this is the best exact permutation of everything because they don't know. But we can look and see, well, when we showed them this picture, this video, they responded better. When we use this opening line, our headline, they responded better. Now, maybe it's not the best image and the best headline. That's okay. Because ultimately what we're worried about isn't the best single element across each one. What is the collective learning of the entire investment that we've made? And then ultimately, how do we use that to make sure that every penny we spend produces the best post IDs that are already completely aware of how users want to be engaged with? And that ad, because we ultimately go to market with the best post ID, it's collating all of the targeting data. It's collating all of the user information. And it's going to go out there and have the best chance for success on day one, because it's not actually day one. It's sitting on the top of every single door that you've knocked on, from every single and permutation of every single sales pitch that you've done. So it's not one salesperson that was lucky enough to get a few people to say yes after a week of just abusing an entire neighborhood. It's the one salesperson that took the time and effort to give a damn about the people before they knocked on the door, that is now really, really good at their job. And you're letting them do the one or two things they do the absolute best, and you're taking the rest of that to market. Now, one of these ideas makes complete sense and actually has a hit rate of about 80-90% of producing really high confidence, really stable assets that you can invest really heavily in. The other one is building individual ads, worrying about audiences, using ABO or manual bidding, and basically running Facebook like it was Google 10 years ago. Which one of those things do you think is ultimately easier, more scalable, more stable, creates a higher bit of incremental lift, and at the end of the day, gets you the lowest CPMs on your account? Sometimes less than $10 on, domestic US conversion objective campaigns. And then which one of those do you think is really commonly used by the same people that whine about $50 CPMs, that are still trying to tell you what type of ad works really well today, what audience is working really well today? And I'll leave it at that. I'm going to not throw in too many pejoratives because I'm trying to be a nicer guy. Anyway, that's something for you to think about. This is how Facebook ads actually work. Again, from the engineering team and the product team, because I was there when we built it over the last 10 years, giving feedback on hundreds of millions of dollars of spend. That's the insight I'm trying to give you today. Once again, thank you if you made it this far. Please hit like, please subscribe, please comment. Just go ahead and like the video if you made it this far. It means everything to YouTube's algorithm to tell them that you responded positively to this, so they're going to show it to more people. And if you like this too, subscribe if you're listening to it on podcast, share it with your friends, comment with any questions you have, and thank you so, so much. What is the best optimization window or attribution window that you can use on Facebook? Let's dive down to the bottom of this question, because honestly, it is quite a simple answer, but in order to understand why it's so simple, there's a lot of complex pieces that we need to decode and demystify and really get to the bottom to it. For what it's worth, I have done well in excess of $10 million spending Facebook and Google's money to do correlation studies for years, and the outcome over 95% of the time has basically been the same thing. So let's dive deep into all of that. I'm super excited that you're here. I really, really appreciate it. You can be anywhere else, and I hope that you're using this in addition to everything else you're seeing to make the best decision for your business. Let's go! First thing, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do that so that you can see new information on almost a daily basis. I'm creating as much content as I possibly can to help you see more success and less stress with your Facebook ads and ultimately your digital marketing efforts. That being said, I think there's been a very heated debate around optimization and attribution windows. And the honest truth is, there isn't a wrong answer here, and I'll be even more accurate. The right answer is different for each person. So let's dive deep into first what this all means, and then we're going to get through all of the available choices and what you should and should not be doing. So thank you again. I really appreciate you being here. If you're following me on socials, it's at CT The Disruptor. Let's dive into it. So first off, what we're talking about here is attribution and optimization windows. Facebook, now Meta, has combined these into one singular option. It used to be that you could optimize towards one thing and then attribute otherwise. I don't necessarily love that they've combined these things, but it has made decision-making easier, although it made reporting more difficult. But honestly, that means that just things are more actionable. So that's kind of a good thing for the vast majority of people. So let me give you what this means. We basically have on the table 4 options. And thankfully, they got rid of the 28-day because that was basically only used by ad agencies to lie to their clients to look good and propagate lies like delayed attribution. And we saw a lot of ad agencies and experts and gurus really push on this thing. And well, they were proven wrong anytime any empirical data study was run, and as soon as it disappeared, nobody's talking about it anymore as though it was some valuable thing that they no longer can do. So again, it was bullshit. Now, let's dive into this. Our 4 options start with what we call one-day click. So within 24 hours of somebody clicking on that ad, the action that you're optimizing for occurs, and they can attribute that to that click. We also have the option of a one-day view, which means within 1 day of a user being shown this ad, that desired action occurred. Now, you can be shown that ad, and even if you have click blocking on, where they can't see that you've clicked on something, they can't necessarily see the traffic back and forth. With CAPI, we can understand that this user took this action. We don't know how they got there, but we showed them this ad, and then this action occurred. We can marry those things. So one-day view is pulling in data, even if somebody clicks, if we can't tell that that user clicked. So there's a little bit of value in there. I don't want to dive too deep into that because it's a highly technical thing. And honestly, that is a massive oversimplification of the truth. And I'm just trying to say it to cover that ground in case somebody brings it up. The other option that we have here is doing the same thing within 7 days of the click. So within a week of somebody clicking, do they take the action that is desired? Now, let's dive into what is of real value here. So if you've been listening to me for years, you know that I think the absolute best optimization window, if you're trying to take action with your data on Facebook, is a one-day click. I think for reporting, one-day click is the only source of truth that's really important if you're trying to have integrity in the data, because it provides you 3 things. Number 1, the lowest amount of opportunity for duplicity in attribution. One-day click means that it's far less likely that somebody clicks on a Facebook ad, opens up an email, does a Google search within 3-4 days, and everybody gets credit for it. That's not an available option if everything has to happen within 24 hours. And the average person doesn't take actions on 5 different platforms within a 24-hour period to make a conversion, but they might do that in a week, so you have lower duplicity in the attribution and your reporting. So ultimately, it's a much more actionable reporting attribution option because you know exactly what the last action that somebody took was to push them over the edge. The last action that somebody took to push them over the edge. So with a one-day click, what we have here is the option of saying, who's ready to buy right now? Now, the honest truth is one-day click is great. It's actually, like I said, my preferred methodology if I have the luxury of using it, and especially if I'm requiring Facebook to deliver me a consistent and stable and scalable result on Facebook. A one-day click, if I have the volume, is phenomenal. Now, there's a lot of provisos in there, and here's why. One-day click tends to favor accounts that have a very high spend, because in order to do it, those actions need to occur within 24 hours. And in order for you to get an ad set out of the learning phase, you're going to need 5 to 7 actions a day to maintain that consistency to get it out of learning. So you're talking about requiring, say you have 3, 4, 5 ad sets, you're going to need to be making dozens of sales attributed just from Facebook, just within 24 hours, just to have the bare minimum required to have this be useful. Now, if you're spending $5,000 or $30,000 a day, this is a no-brainer. But if you're spending $500 a day, this is probably not an option. So the application of a one-day click is a luxury that many advertisers don't have. And I want to say that because while it is the most actionable piece, it's only the most actionable because you have the luxury of being able to use the data in that way. And I want to really stress that. Now, if you do have the luxury of doing that, it is probably the highest integrity use of the Facebook information that their platform has on user behavior, both on Facebook, in their environment, and after the click to make things happen. But I also want to specify something very clear here. Facebook in the algorithm is not just optimizing towards somebody's actions because of what they see after the click. And this is a part of the equation that almost every expert and guru that I have conversations with that doesn't really know what they're talking about completely misses. When this is the reason why iOS 14 isn't the reason that your Facebook ad is suffering. If you're using broad, Facebook is looking towards your behavior. Now, the average person in the first world has had a Facebook account for upwards of 10 years. You've engaged with thousands or hundreds of thousands of pieces of content, if not more. You've been on dozens or hundreds of thousands of web pages. Facebook has mapped out your user journey with literally tens or hundreds of millions of data points. They know what it is you're trying to do. Even with iOS 14 blocking what's happening on some users after the click, Facebook knows, well, you clicked on an ad from Adidas, you clicked on an ad from New Balance, you clicked on an ad from Reebok, maybe you're interested in seeing this ad from Converse. Not only did you click on those ads, but you were bouncing around, you came back within 5 minutes, within 8 minutes, within 12 minutes. And we know generally that is the amount of time that you spend on a website and come back to Facebook because you're in the mood of buying because of correlations that have occurred over the last decade of your existence on the platform. So what Facebook's actually what iOS 14 is blocking after the click is a small fraction to a percentage of individuals. It is a small fraction of the algorithm and very much not the needle mover data point that most people that don't understand Facebook ads claim it is. So one day click, if you have the volume to make it work, is amazing. Here's another thing though that I want to specify this before we get to the other options. What Facebook attributes to that ad is not all the data that Facebook sees. Facebook is seeing every time that purchase pixel event fires. So if you get 1,000 buys in a day and only one of them come from a Facebook ad, your ads manager might show one, but your events manager might show 1,000. And Facebook is able to use the data of that entire 1,000 to inform the next impression. So Facebook is using that data of the entire 1,000 plus the hundreds of millions of data points for every single user on what they're doing in real time, including today across multiple platforms, to determine who's best likely to see this impression, which is why broad is better than any interest group for reason 437. One day click basically says who's most likely to take an action right now, which is awesome, right? One day click is the gum in the checkout aisle, right? It is, can I get somebody to buy this? One day click is the, after you bought a car and there's the guy or girl making you sign the paperwork. And by the way, do you want this $500 upsell thing? You're like, fine, I just spent 30 grand on the car. I've been here for 4 hours. Just give me the thing. I need to get out of here. That's the one day click. And it's amazing. It is the most powerful tool that you can use. And it gives you the highest level of integrity and data. So why doesn't everybody use it all the time? And let's get to the other options. A one-day view. Now, one-day view, the argument is, well, one-day view doesn't bring incremental sales. I would say I 100% disagree with that. And we've proven that 95% of tests with literally 10 figures in ad spend testing across multiple channels for years. Now, don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that one-day view is going to bring you a majority of incremental lift. That's absolute bullshit, and that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is one-day view allows Facebook to see users and take into account on that ad, well, somebody saw this ad and then they made a purchase. Well, let's go down the rabbit hole of who might see an ad and make a purchase, but not necessarily click. Well, anybody with iOS 14 ad blocking, that's one pool. Because of the tech we talked about before, and again, that's not a complete perfect answer, and I understand that. And if you'd like to explain that further, please go into the comments section of this video so that other people watching it can get into it. Honestly, that's a 45-minute conversation on its own, and I'm trying to make this less than a 45-minute video. But who else? Well, the person that sees your ad and goes to Amazon. The person that sees your ad and just shares it with a friend who then goes to Google. When you include a one-day view, what you're saying is attribution, or in modeling on your GA or some other platform where you're looking at direct or branded search or any search result or even email signups. It's able to account some value for that, which is by no means purely incremental. But if we're only going for purely incremental traffic, you're either this or you're this. Anybody that's both gets missed. And there's a giant opportunity there for the vast majority of advertisers to take advantage of. I'm not going to say everyone, because I don't really generally try to speak in absolutes unless it's an empirical fact. Like, yes, water is wet. The sky is blue on well, I mean, sometimes it can be other colors, but I don't even say that. I've seen it be green when there's a tornado outside or something. My point to all of this is that one-day view does have value to a brand. Now, when do you use one-day view? Well, I would argue that the worst place to do it is one-day click and one-day view. Because if you have the data to use one-day click and you don't need the whole 7 days, don't pollute it with the one-day view. Because you have enough volume to say, I'm going after data integrity, and I'm going after the highest quality data. You have a qualitative solution to your data situation. You have the hyperbolic best quality data, and you can use that to scale your business. Awesome. Throwing in view to that is a compromise of what I would consider ultimately the sum of its parts as less than what it could be. Let's move to another spot, 7-day click. Why not do 7-day click instead of 1 day? Well, you'll hear a lot of bullshit arguments around this. Well, like, our customer has a journey. Fuck that. That has nothing to do with attribution. If the average customer takes 7 days to make a decision, they're going to see another Facebook ad in that time. They're going to search things. They're going to see more content from you. Anybody that says the reason they want 7 day because the customer journey is long fundamentally doesn't understand attribution and should honestly take a moment of time to understand how the tech works before giving more bad advice. That is an empirical fact. That is not an opinion. So why is 7-day click not as good as a 1 day? Well, because a 7-day click allows you to see a longer window, which is great. But if you don't have enough data for 1-day click to work, and you're going to open it up a little bit, if you're saying, I don't have enough data for that to be effective, then why are you not including all of the data? So 7-day click has less information than a 7-day click, 1-day view. So my argument here is, and again, I'm just saying what I've learned from, 10 figures. Is it 10? No, 8. Sorry, my apologies. 8 figures in spend for years. Man, I made that mistake earlier. Someone's going to call me out on it. And oh man, I fucked up. Anyway, 8 figures of spend over many years across multi-channel lift exercises with both Google and Facebook and other multi-touch attribution modeling platforms that just tried to make this stuff work, which they've all given up because basically it's, and the only reason you have multi-touch attribution is so that everybody inside of a very large business can validate their paycheck. It's bullshit. Man, that 10-figure thing's gonna come back and bite me. Oh well, whatever. I made a mistake. That being said, 7-day click, 1-day view gives you a quantitative solution to data. Now, ultimately, data is only as valuable as it is actionable. And so when you are trying to get data, what we want is either we want the highest quality bit that we can. And we either get that in a qualitative solution, which is the one-day click, right? That is the highest quality data. We only have the most high quality data. We've screened out everything else that is of lesser value. We're only going off of that and we're completely fine with it and we're crushing. Or we have a quantitative solution where we're saying, hey, Facebook, you can see everything. And we're going to let you seeing everything try to give us the best result. Now, you've heard me also before say, especially in this, where the one-day click is a luxury that brands can take advantage of because they have enough actions to be taken in one day to get their ad sets out of learning phase. Now, a 7-day click gives you a week to do that. So it means that, yes, you need to get enough actions in any given day to get out of the learning phase, but that action has 7 days to occur, not 24. So it becomes 7 times easier to achieve that action. And not only is it 7 times easier after the click, but you're getting the view through as well. So it becomes fundamentally easier to get ad sets out of the learning phase, which ultimately is the most important thing. If your ad sets are not out of learning phase, what you have is a lack of confidence and an instability in your architecture. Any ad set you have that is not out of learning phase is a liability to your overall growth and stability. That also, empirical fact, not an arguable point, not an opinion. So, what is my point here? Well, a 7-day click, 1-day view gives the system the most amount of data to deliver the highest quality impressions. Now, the argument here is, well, Facebook's going to show a bunch of impressions to people that aren't necessarily incremental lift. You know what? That might be true. But does it have to be 100% incremental? Would our business benefit by driving click conversions as well as being able to optimize impressions to those actions which might allow somebody to, which might optimize towards a customer journey of someone who might buy again that may not have before, or go to Google and search the brand, or go to Amazon and buy? What is the incremental lift of that 1-day click that is clearly defined? Again, not a one-to-one basis, but allowing a 1-day click does lead to the correlation factor to lift in non-Facebook click driven customer journeys is inarguable. It's there. So the question really becomes, do you have enough volume to use a 1-day click or do you not? Now, here's the really fun part. Attribution is bullshit. Remember that there's almost no customer journey where somebody sees an ad for the very first time for a thing that they've never ever seen before, that they didn't know exists and they bought in the first click. That ideal is absolute bullshit. That's why we don't rely on prospecting ads and think that they're all net new people. That's why we don't worry about first time impression rate. That's why mid-funnel and bottom funnel ad sets inside of our Facebook account are actually liabilities to our bottom line and hurt incremental lift. That's why we start to talk about attribution being bullshit, because also we can't necessarily see all those things. We can't optimize for that action and really realistically grow the brand, because ultimately Facebook is able to see what people are doing on Facebook, as well as their actions outside of Facebook and also on other customer sites and with other competitors' pages, and ultimately say this person's the best person to show an impression to right now because of X, Y, and Z, 10 other actions that got them to this point. And if you say only this is the thing to get somebody to buy, what you're effectively saying is that person in the checkout process when you bought the car that's giving you that $500 upsell, they're the reason you bought the car. Or that salesperson is the reason that you bought that car, considering that you've never seen a vehicle before in your life. You didn't see anything from your friends. You didn't see any billboards. You didn't test drive anything else. You didn't go online. You weren't influenced by anything else in the world other than that salesperson who somehow randomly found you off of the street when you weren't even expecting to buy a car. It's bullshit. And it's bullshit because it's not actionable. So with that being said, the question really becomes, if you have the volume to go off of a 1-day click, when is it okay to use a 7-day 1-day? And I would argue this. If you are sophisticated enough in your marketing to not rely on attribution. Instead, you are measuring for incremental lift across your entire ecosystem. Maybe you're using ecosystem ROAS, and you're able to solve for these problems with super high confidence. If you're able to do that, then making sure that Facebook does as good as it can on Facebook isn't necessarily the most important thing for your business. Because what's most important for you is that Facebook, this thing that is the fuel to your fire, this force multiplier for your entire ecosystem of omni-channel advertising, has the most amount of data signals to be the greatest force multiplying effort that it can. And in that way, there's no attribution or optimization model that's more effective than a 7-day click, 1-day view. Because the 7-day click, 1-day view allows the Facebook journey to give the most added value to Amazon and to Google and to email. Maybe it's not bringing you purely incremental sales, but maybe you're not asking Facebook to be purely incremental. If your goal with Facebook is to say, I have an existing business that is working really well, and what I want to do is pour fuel on that fire, then Facebook isn't purely incremental. Facebook isn't all net new customers and net new sales. Facebook is, I've got something that works and I want to make it 10 times bigger. It's actually lifting the efforts that you're seeing on every channel to make each one of those things stronger. And in that way, a 7-day click, 1-day view is actually the strongest thing you can ask Facebook to do. So my point in all of this is, the right answer is different for almost everyone. You have to figure out what works best for you. And this brings me to my final point. And this is the unfortunate truth. People will say, well, test to see what works best for you. I'm going to let you know this. That test is almost impossible to execute. And I'll tell you why. It's almost impossible for 3 reasons. Number 1, most brands don't have the luxury of having a mastery of their incremental lift modeling across all of their attribution across all of their channels and their attribution in a sophisticated way that is strong enough to say, well, this Facebook ad was on a 1-day click and this one was on a 7-day view. And because of that, I know what the right move is. So it requires a level of integrity in your data and amount of volume in your data that most brands can never get to. And ultimately, it also impedes any other testing that you would have anywhere else. So even doing that test effectively would mean that you would have to cease all other testing for a long time in order to understand what the right move is with empirically solid data at statistical significance. You'd have to stop literally every other test that you're running because you are changing something so fundamental to the source of traffic into your system. And that's a really big piece to understand, because basically now everything else is a control and the force multiplier is something that you're changing. So like, in order to get that answer, you have to stop so many other important things that it becomes a liability. And most people don't even have the luxury of being able to do that. Second point, when you are doing this, we have to think, what is the net benefit? The net benefit of picking the right attribution or optimization window for your business is not going to be some better performance next week on Facebook. The net benefit is you have chosen a lane on how you're going to manage the acquisition and growth strategy for your business as a whole. So my point there is, there's not a right or wrong answer on the Facebook side, but this is an ethos of problem solving that goes all the way up to the CMO and ultimately will fundamentally change the roadmap for everything that you do afterwards. Otherwise, it's not necessarily even that worth it, because are you going to make Facebook look good? Who gives a shit? Making Facebook look good only is beneficial to an ad agency that's charging a commission on ad spend, that's trying to improve their commissions by raising ad spend by making Facebook look good. The third point, which I think is the most important, I'm going to end with this. If you're currently running a 1-day click and you want to test to see if 7-day click, 1-day view adds any value, you've already spent time and money training the algorithm to be really good at a one-day click. For you to realistically think that it is going to be able to say, well, now you're 7-day click, 1-day view. And for it to be competitive enough for you to have statistical significance on the outcome of that test, what you're going to have to do is completely train something else to be as good as that 1-day click to evaluate them against each other. Now, maybe you're an advertiser that spent $500 total, in which case it's really easy to do. But if you're an advertiser that spent $1 million, $20 million, even $500,000, training Facebook to do one thing really well. And then you say, hey, look, go ahead and do something different. Let's see how well it is. I'm going to go ahead and save you a lot of time and money. 99% of the time, that new thing you're asking it to do isn't going to be as good. Because you've trained the machine to do one specific task. And now you're asking it to behave completely differently. And for you to expect it to be able to be on par, even right away, much less even after a week or two, I will let you know that that is an unrealistic expectation. So in order for you to conduct this test, you have to be willing to invest long-term and have an infrastructure inside that is going to allow you to truly be able to define incrementality. And then ultimately, the answer there is going to have to give you a direction in which to change the entire way you're force multiplying your business. So it's an incredibly important test to run if you have that luxury, but this is something that's going to take months to do properly. And if you don't have the time and effort and the ability to do that, then it is not something that is ultimately worth your time and effort to do. And I would argue ultimately that comes down to, do you have the volume to run on a 1-day click? If so, the answer 90% of the time is going to be that's probably the right move, unless you're sophisticated enough as an advertiser to measure for incremental lift. In that case, 1-day click might not be the best move for you if Facebook is not the primary source of the lift that you're conducting across your entire business. If it is the big turnkey to your system, then yes, go to 1-day click because it's going to drive a higher volume of higher quality customers into your store, and you have the luxury of doing that. If it is instead a small piece of your overall business, maybe SEO is 40% of your stuff, and influencer is 30%, and PR is 10%, and Facebook is making up a little bit of 15-20% that's left, then maybe actually going on a 7-day click, 1-day view is much better for you. My point here is, this is way more advanced than this one is better than this one. And if anybody tells you this one is better than this one, without a lot of that proviso, understand it is a criminally simple explanation. And that's fine, because sometimes that's what people need. But if you're legitimately trying to evaluate your 7- or 8-figure brand on which way to go, I want to give you the permission to lean into what's going to allow you to use the system most effectively. That's the most important thing. Because ultimately, Facebook is performing a function in your business. Whichever one of these options allows it to do that job better is the option that you should choose. And if you want to change paths, that's okay. But understand there are a plethora of downstream decisions that are going to be coming that come because of that. Ultimately, your TLDR strategy here is do a 7-day click, 1-day view if you're starting out in low budget. If you're driving 100 or a couple hundred conversions a day, odds are probably a 1-day click is going to help you out. Once you get to the point where you're spending dozens of thousands of dollars on Facebook, and it also isn't the primary source of your acquisition and growth, going back to a 7-day, 1-day might be the best thing. And fun fact, if you are using predictive modeling like a cost cap or a lookalike, Maybe that's where the rest of your account runs on a 1 day, but on that one, you're going to do a 7 because you don't want to bleed the value that you're getting out of the 1 day with this other test that was legitimately going to steal the data set. So that's a whole other conversation. Anyway, I hope that this is helpful. I've been having this debate with extremely powerful and smart people for many, many, many years, and I've changed my opinion 20 times. But over the last 4 or 5 years, 95% of tests basically come down to this. 1 day click, if integrity of data is your force multiplier. If the tip of your spear is, I'm getting enough, I want to make sure that every impression is of the highest value for an action taken from a Facebook impression today after a click, go for that. If the answer isn't that, then 7 day click, 1 day view. The options in between ultimately are compromises of lower value. And I would never compromise the legitimacy and upside of my dreams and my opportunities and my baby that I'm growing from the ground up on something that is of lesser value. You have the choice. Pick and choose what problems you want to have based on what solutions you can best account for. And ultimately, that's 1 day click, 7 day click, 1 day view. All right, I hope that was helpful for you. If you want to, you can go ahead and subscribe. There's other videos here, YouTube. Welcome to the definitive guide on dynamic creative, the greatest tool that Facebook allows us to have to test creatives, scale accounts, consolidate data, make more reliable results, make our jobs easier so we work less and less and less and have a higher and higher confidence and higher quality assets that can help us develop our business and plans for the future. If you want to know more about this, you are in the right place. Let's go! So, first off, you could be anywhere on the internet right now, and I really appreciate you being here. And it means a lot to me that you have chosen to take this time in your day to learn about this topic. Dynamic creative is something that's very near and dear to my heart. I use it on every single account. I have not legitimately been able to come across a reasonable database solution and cause to not utilize it in any account in years now. And for the vast majority of accounts that I run, students that I have and clients that I work with, quite legitimately, there's not a single post ID that we've made in years because Dynamic Creative does all the work for us. So if you want to know how to use Dynamic Creative, and yes, iOS 14 is here, and no, that has had zero impact on the reliability, functionality, or your ability to make good ads from it. So let's get rid of all that nonsense and start making the world a lot easier, because if you were still testing ads by building out 4 or 5 and a bunch of different ad sets and launching it every single week, you are at least 2 to 3 years behind what you should be doing. So let's get into the first part right here around consolidating our data, okay? So when we're talking about consolidating our data with dynamic creatives, what we're getting at here is if we're testing all of our ads inside of one ad unit, inside of Facebook, what happens when you make a bunch of different post IDs manually is that Facebook is sharing, or Facebook is not sharing all of the data that any of those ads get. So you basically have 4 or 5 different people wandering off into the wilderness, seeing what happens. Now, you might get lucky in a couple of days. Hey, this one got 5 sales. Great. Now everything goes there to try to chase that. That is highly reactionary, very low confidence, and ultimately produces really low value and confidence assets, which is the reason why your ads are dying so fast and why you need to make more ads to keep up. The flywheel is not perpetual. In order to keep it spinning, you have to add a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And so you keep ramping up your creative testing speed and volume just to maintain the same performance. And you know what happens? Because you're forcing post IDs on people, which is kind of disrespecting the customer experience. What is happening to your ad account as a net result? You're getting higher CPMs. You are getting lower page scores. You are losing higher value options. And ultimately, you are inhibiting your future success because you're not using tools the way they were designed to be used, and instead you want to work harder to make less money. Now, I don't know about you, but that feels like bad business. So what dynamic creative does for us is it actually consolidates all of this data and the results. So instead of having 20 ads or like 50 ads, like for instance, if you make, you might make the mistake of running 5 ads where you have some creative and they have different headlines and different primary text. Maybe you're running the same headline and the same primary text with 5 ads. Great. But you're still trying to guess what users want to see. And each one of those ads has its own life cycle, which means that you're not able to say, well, one ad appeals to one person, one ad appeals to another. And we can tell because of the way this ad works and the way this ad works, what we want to do to person number 3. Every single impression, especially early on when you're in the learning phase, is the Facebook's best attempt at giving you better than dumb luck. Now, really what you're going to get here is trying to optimize for, while you are trying to push for a net business result, what you're getting is optimization for estimated action rate as well as in the auction. So instead of getting good business results that are stable, projectable, definable, and accomplish a business objective at large, you're getting results in the first couple of days, and then the system is rallying behind that result regardless of the end user's experience. Now, if you get 3 or 4 sales on the first or second day around some ad, but it's something that most people don't want to see, it's still going to get all the spend. And maybe it has a good CPA, maybe it doesn't. But if you make that same mistake time after time after time after time, what happens to your ad account over a course of months or years? Your CPMs go up. Because Facebook is seeing you as a liability to their business model and their bottom line. So while you are trying to ultimately find the best ad that that's gonna make people buy, what you're really doing is saying, how can I throw enough shit at the wall to try to make money while also not respecting any person that sees this ad? Now, that's not what you're really trying to do, but that's the net effect of your actions and your investment. So what's really important here inside of a dynamic creative is that Facebook is able to take your selection of headlines and primary text and creatives and ultimately put them together to make sure that the end user sees the best possible combination for their user experience that also then generates a positive business result for you. But instead of having 5 or 20 or 100 different customer journeys and all these different post IDs that are all completely working independently, you have sort of a mesh, a supportive network of parts that are working together to ultimately deliver the best net result. And that's the really big, important, widely undervalued and overviewed piece of this, is that it works in tandem to deliver you the best net result while also making you a really, really good business partner to Facebook, because you're letting Facebook determine what people want to see and what they don't want to see. The other side of this too is that it consolidates the results into one space. So when you get a win over here and you get a win over here, it doesn't mean that Facebook's not going to try to spend against these two things. Facebook is able to say, well, this headline gets results, this creative gets results, this primary text gets results, but maybe this primary text gets results, but this person will stop on an image and that person will stop on a video. You're still getting a good net blended result. And Facebook is still able to learn ultimately what's maybe the best possible combination for the end user based on estimated action rate. But your business objectives are still a priority that Facebook is respecting. So it's ultimately delivering you a more stable, more projectable, more desirable outcome. It's, by the time it leaves the learning phase, it's also way more projectable. And it's not on the back of one post ID getting everything because it was lucky in the first few hours or days. So as a result, dynamic creative actually uses machine learning to your favor instead of you doing way more work to try to outsmart it and undermine it. Now, the honest truth is, if you're going to try to outsmart and undermine the world's greatest machine learning platform to try to make money while disrespecting the end customer, your future is going to be pretty bleak. And there's a big reason why the people that work on dynamic creative to produce post IDs, no way, we will get to how to extract the post ID, and we will get to how to build dynamic creatives properly, and we will get to how to understand the actual post that did all of the work, even though you can't see all the data inside the thing, which is also complete nonsense. We're going to get to all of that. But the other most important thing is here is while that test is happening, you can actually still get good results. And a lot of people make the mistake of having a scaling campaign and a testing campaign and basically saying, what got lucky? Let me bet my entire business on it. And what happens? Well, if their business model is good, they're able to outrun the depreciating value of their marketing assets, but eventually their cost of advertising continues to go up. Their CPMs continue to go up. Their competitors that are more respectful to the end user experience are getting higher and higher quality auctions for cheaper and cheaper, because ultimately Facebook is your business partner. And the more that you disrespect your business partner, the less and less likely they're going to show you to their best impressions, because somebody else is doing a much better job about giving a damn about the real person at the other end of that click. So dynamic creative is infinitely more powerful than building a bunch of post studies. Plus, it's way easier. Plus, it has the compounding effect of value. Plus, it presents far less of a liability to your business's bottom line in aggregate over time. So because of all of these things, dynamic creative is an essential part of basically every ad account that I have run for years. And I have not heard anybody so far, and if you disagree with this, please comment below. Let me know what things are going on for you. Tell me why I'm wrong. I have not heard a data-based reason to not use it, other than people saying, well, it doesn't work for me. And I almost guarantee every time that I walk into those conversations, somebody's either using dynamic creatives that are too complex, they are running them with a timeline as how they're running things. Oh, every 7 days we launch a new thing. Statistical significance and the scientific method doesn't know what a fucking calendar is. And it doesn't matter. If your test is winning, why end it? And if it's projectable until it is, it's not over. And if it's better than your control stuff, why get in the way of that? I've scaled plenty of campaigns because the tests were better than the control environment. I just had a greater PSM on the account for profitable scaling margin. And that allowed me to continue to push budgets or drive a higher volume of customers into my store by reducing my CPA while keeping my LTV and my COGS the same. So I'm creating a higher margin per customer journey, which is fantastic. None of which is available when you're building single post IDs, trying to run your business off of getting lucky and working really hard. And that's the big piece that I really want to drive home, is that ultimately you're going to lose that battle to somebody that's using machine learning, because a simple machine will beat out hard work at the end of the day every single time. Now, one of the big things I want to talk about here is, why do dynamic creatives work for me and my students, and why do they not work for a lot of other people? Well, there's two really big things that we have to understand. First off, some folks load up the dynamic creative with way too many possibilities. And what I mean by this is, you can throw in 5 images or 10 creatives and you can do like 5 headlines. Let's say you load it all the way up, right? Let's say you do 5 headlines and 5 creatives and 5 post ID, 5 primary text. That's not even loading it all the way up. That's 125 possible combinations. Let's say you can go further and make the mistake of dropping in 5 descriptions, things that people don't even see. Now you're sitting at 625. Let's say you go even crazier and drop in 2 or 3 CTAs. You might be at nearly 2,000 ads. Do you know how much money it's going to take for you to get through 2,000 permutations? I'm going to give you a hint. I've had 7-figure daily budgets. It wasn't enough. So how do we make this work for us? Ultimately, dynamic creatives are a tool to help us make high confidence binary decisions for the development of high value assets so that we can invest more appropriately to deliver business objectives at scale. Now, if you listen to what I said there, not a damn bit of it was about audience, because audience doesn't matter, because every ad finds its own audience. Retargeting, interest groups, lookalikes, unnecessary, obsolete. You do not need it inside of Facebook. I'm also not talking about bidding models, because again, that's a 5-cent solution and a $100 problem. What we're talking about here is binary solutions so we can think like investment bankers. We don't care if Facebook gets credit for stuff. We don't care about making everything have a fair chance. Do you want everything to have a fair chance? Or do you want to make money? And that's really what we're talking about. Spend is a meritocracy. So when you can make binary decisions to ultimately move your account forward, you're going to be in a much, much better place. So how do we set up our dynamic creatives? Well, one of the things that I've really been harping on a lot lately, and I've been teaching for a long time, is something I call the 3-2-2 format. Let's get 3 of one option. Primarily, I say 3 creatives. Maybe it's 2 images and a video. Maybe it's 3 videos. Maybe it's 3 images. It doesn't matter. And if anybody tells you, well, what's working on Facebook right now is images, or what's working on Facebook right now is videos, I can tell you really what's working right now is that person has no fucking clue what they're talking about. Because it doesn't matter. What's working right now is what your customers are responding to. And the honest truth is creative formats, styles, all of that stuff, there are trends and there are things that just work. And I have made things just work regardless of trend for years, because you're developing a brand identity way more than just trying to attach yourself to some trend that's going to be dead in 2 weeks. And if it's going to be dead in 2 weeks, do you really want to make a business investment in trying to bet your entire future on something that's going to be obsolete in 14 days? Of course not. So the idea here is if we get 3 creatives, 2 headlines, 2 primary texts, we're ultimately ending up with 12 total possible permutations. Now, if one image really does well and the 2 videos don't do well at delivering a positive user experience, driving actions, engagements, and comments, and clicks, etc., then that one's going to get a lot of spend. Now, it doesn't mean that the videos didn't get a fair chance. It meant that the end user experience wasn't nearly as good with them. And now Facebook has determined that out of the possible 12, we can already just eliminate huge swaths. In this case, 4 ads are completely off the table, right? 6 ads are completely off the table, because all we need is that 1 image plus the permutation. So really now it's 8 options are off the table, because we don't really need them, because that image is the thing they're doing really well. Now, sometimes you'll see, well, both of my headlines got the same amount of spend, or both of my primary texts got the same amount of spend and results. You know what? That's fine. What that means is that's not the variable that's the driver of success. And also, I hope that you're waiting for these to get dozens of results, because 7 is not a data set worth anything to a person. 3 days doesn't mean shit. If you can't project what next week's CPA is going to be in platform from that ad, yes, I said in platform because you know what? iOS 14 doesn't hurt Facebook's ability to do its job. It doesn't. And the inaccuracy that we see in reporting is just Facebook being more honest. It's a machine. It's a computer program. If it's off by the same variance every single time, because it's a program making the same actions over and over again. Computer programs don't have good days and bad days. They make the same thing over and over again. And all you need to know more than anything is where do you have the highest confidence, because you're happy with the consistent output and the relative performance against existing control and baseline output. That's what matters. So ultimately, if you're running this dynamic creative and you see 1 image getting all the spend, both primary text basically split it, and then 1 headline shoots away with it, awesome. And after 5 days, well, this thing's doing pretty well for us. And after like 7 to 10 days, you're like, you know what? I know over the last 3 days, if I were to project out in the future, this thing's going to come in at a $32. Great. How does that compare to the control elements? Now, if you're really paying attention to a lot of stuff, you will know that I really hate the idea of a scale and a test campaign, because that completely fights the scientific method entirely, which basically says, I'm going to try to make money, and I'm going to set up my account to reject hundreds of years of scientific consensus. Doesn't make any sense. So maybe you've been following along and you know we have the 1 campaign strategy, right? Like this nice little sheet. Now we've got our winners ad set with all of our control ads for our offer that is our best option on PSM, because we are not trying to chase 4 different offers, because we like the idea of making money, not trying to get lucky and then placing blame on other folks when things go wrong because they're not running a good business. Now, when we have this, if you notice, we have our winners ad set, and then these DCTs are trying to actually produce a high confidence output that beats the worst output in one of these winners pieces. Because all we need to do to improve our system is ultimately raise our average. We need to improve our net performance. The easiest way of improving our net performance is not to abuse our best performers, it's to improve the quality of our worst ones. And what I mean by this more than anything is, let's say, let's use a sports reference, right? If you've got one all-star on a sports team and then a bunch of fifth graders chasing him around in a professional game, maybe that one all-star, maybe it's Michael Jordan, right? Probably going to be okay. Kobe Bryant, whatever, right? Like LeBron James and 4 fifth graders against an NBA team might be able to score some points. Now, you're not going to be able to do too much better by making LeBron James even better. But if you upgrade one of those fifth graders to, say, another LeBron James or a Kyrie Irving or a Steph Curry or even a Scottie Pippen, respect them, or a Horace Grant, if you want to go old school. If you improve the quality of the subpar options, of the choices that Facebook can make on your behalf, you're going to create better choices because you are improving the quality of the worst choice that Facebook can make for you. You see me say this before, but a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So if you want to make a stronger chain, improve the weakest link. And in this situation, when you have a 3-2-2 type setup, you're going to be able to go in and inside of your analysis, when you break down by element, you're absolutely going to be able to see, well, what got more spend? Spend is a meritocracy. Spend matters. What got the most spend? Great. Now, if you understand the output of this thing is good, and one element got 90% of the spend, odds are that thing is probably why you did well. When you have a simple setup with 3 creatives, 2 headlines, and 2 primary texts, you're going to have a really good idea because odds are 1 or probably 2 of those variables, the primary text, the headline, and the creative, are going to have hyperbolic distribution, meaning one of those elements within that set are going to run away with all the spend. One creative might get 90% of the spend. One headline might get 90% of the spend. Maybe one primary text gets 80 or 90. Some of the other things might be even, but still you're going to know based on spend share, which is really market share of the data set, what pieces are good for us. So if you know that this thing has the lion's share of the market share of the data set, and we like the outcome, then it becomes really high confidence for us to say, well, that's probably the thing that we want. And what's really important here too is if you don't like the outcome, it becomes really easy to optimize that dynamic creative by just removing the thing that's getting all of the spend and giving it one more chance. And you know what you don't need to do? You don't need to give it 5 more chances. You know why? Because you only have 3 options. You probably have 3 other dynamic creatives that are better right behind it. It's about volume of this concept testing to replace. I don't need to spend $1 million inside of one thing to say, was this idea good, when I've got 5 other ideas behind it. If that didn't work, fine, scrap it, launch the next one. And consistently rotate to always improve the worst option. If you're always improving the worst option, then it's really, really fucking hard to not get better. And if you're constantly getting better, say you're getting 2% better every week, that can 3x your business in a space of 1 year. That is a minimal growth opportunity, which to me sounds way easier than launching 20 or 50 or 100 ads every week, hoping to get lucky out of all of it and running that as my primary business strategy on maintaining an account where I've already said I don't trust the attribution to begin with. Like, those arguments don't make any sense. Those values don't compute. And honestly, binary decision-making is the highest confidence decision-making you can make. And using statistical significance and the scientific method is the smartest way of doing testing. So why not combine the 2 of those things so you don't have to work nearly as fucking hard and every week you get a little bit better? I have yet to hear a data-based argument that says you shouldn't do that. And it's been years. And believe me, I have asked some of the smartest and brightest and most successful people out there. And by the time I get this deep into the conversation, I don't get straight answers anymore. And I get it. I'm super nerdy into the thing. I don't expect other people to be, but that's why I'm here. That's what I'm doing. And really what I want to get to close this out is, well, what do you do now that the test is going? You know you like an ad, but you want to test more things, and we've scaled it to some region, and now we want to take action. What are we going to get the post ID? You can't get a post ID from a dynamic creative. That's a lie. There are two ways of doing it. Now, one way is Facebook telling you this is the ad with the highest estimated action rate, and then you can compare the elements of that ad against your reporting, and if the performance indexes well against what Facebook wants, well, then the ad with the best estimated action rate is also the ad with the best business result. But that's not always the case. It is 15, 20, 30% of the time where you might find that the ad that everybody really likes to engage with is not the ad that drives all the business success. How many times do we get clickbait shit? They got great CPMs, wonderful CPCs, and nobody buys. Remember, CPCs don't mean shit. CTRs don't mean shit. I'll take a worse CTR all day because it means I'm probably reaching way more people. A much lower CTR and a much lower CPM means I can beat you on volume, and I'm going to beat you long term because I'm a better partner to Facebook than you will be. And by the time you're complaining about trying to find another platform, I'm just stacking paper. So the point here is, how do we get it? Well, there are two really fucking easy ways of getting it done. Number one, you can click on the ad, go to the ad level, of course, and hit the edit and hit preview. In there, you're going to see share. You click on that little button, and it's going to pop down, and you're going to see an option that says Facebook post with comments. Now, when you click on Facebook post with comments, it's going to show you all of the permutations that have gotten engagements in the rank of estimated action rate. Now, maybe you like that first one because it indexes all the elements, the copy, the headline, the creative, completely match what you've seen. How do you get it? Click on the timestamp where it says so-and-so page created by you, and timestamp is a button what? Click on that. What you're going to see is the URL will change from DCO question mark God knows what to Facebook / page ID / post / an awful fucking string of numbers. That awful string of numbers is your post ID. So when you go to your winners, your winners ad set, your proving ground, your control environment, and your one campaign, because remember, we're not trying to be smarter than every scientist for the last several hundred years, and we want to work way less hard to be way more successful. So we drop that post ID in there, hopefully to replace the worst available choice by hitting create ad, making an ad, and in that option, we can hit create or use existing post ID, copy, paste, done. Now, sometimes we don't find the one that we want, or we want to see all of them, or maybe you're running lead gen where this doesn't work for you. You, my friend, are not doomed. You just have to go hit up the hamburger button in the upper left-hand corner. I hope this isn't flipped, but whatever. In the upper left-hand corner of your screen, you're going to see 3 lines. When you click on that, scroll down to where it says page posts. Click on that. Now, inside of that, you're going to see published posts, organic posts, ads posts. Click on that ads post button. And it's going to show you in chronological order every single post that has ever been made running ads on your entire account. Cross-reference that with the date that you launched the ad. And all of a sudden, you're going to see, oh man, boom, there's like a dozen things here that more or less look the same. That were launched at the exact same time. That's every post ID from that dynamic creative. You can go in there and you can grab whatever one you want. Now, spoiler alert, if your ad preview didn't show you the thing, well, this thing got the most, this thing's got the lowest CPA, and that thing's got the lowest CPA, and that thing got the lowest CPA. Why isn't it the one that comes out? Maybe it's because that ad didn't actually do well. Good elements don't necessarily always combine to be the best aggregate, right? How many times have we seen putting the best 3 things in a room and getting dog shit out of it, when instead you get things that work well together, wildly outperform it? So you can try to put all the stuff together in there all you want, but if you need an archive, there's your option. So anyway, with that being said, I hope you find value here. Go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and ring the bell. Comment below if you think that I'm wrong about something. I'd love to learn why you disagree, what you're doing that's better. Help me improve so that I can help everybody else improve. And until next time, I'll see you on the internet. Welcome to the definitive guide to the one campaign Facebook ad account. It's literally all you need. We're going to break down the how and why this works. And you're seeing a lot more folks say, we're going to kind of get away from doing the test in one campaign and the scale in another campaign. I've been running this since 2019. We literally wrote the case study that's taught by Facebook 4 years ago. We're going to break all that down, the structure, the execution, also how we can use that to scale, not only spend, but efficiency. So when we come away with this, you're going to know the architecture, the structure, the what, the why, the how. One campaign ad accounts are all you need. And personally, I'm using them to drive over $1 million a month in spend at a profit. And I've done that for years. I've taught people around the world how to make it happen. And we're going to dive into it in just a moment. But first, I want to say thank you very much. I know you could be literally anywhere on the internet right now, and you've chosen to be here. And I really appreciate it. So feel free to ask any questions that you have. Let me know any way that I can be of more help to you. Also, if you like what you see here, please go ahead and subscribe. We also have a newsletter. You can go to newsletter.facebookdisruptor.com and sign up for that for free. And all the things we're going to talk about today, as well as on all the definitive guide videos you'll see, and everything on the podcast and on social, we talk about all of it inside the Facebook Ads MBA program. And big shout out to our community over there. If you want to know more about that, in short, it is an immersive experience with lifetime access to over 100 hours of video, dozens of ebooks, courses on every discipline that you need, and a community of elite advertisers from around the world that are focused on helping each other be successful with the same standardized and repeatable system and process so they get more success and less stress. That being said, let's go. So, how and why the one campaign architecture works. Let's break this down for a second. Number one, let me just give you the architecture, and I'm going to show you a sticky note so that you can see it right here. And for those listening on the podcast, we've got 3 active ad sets in one CBO campaign. These ad sets are comprised of 2 dynamic creative ad sets and 1 winners ad set. That winner's ad set is comprised of the best post IDs from the dynamic creatives. Generally speaking, we have about 3 to 5 ads in this winner's ad set. And the purpose of the other dynamic creatives are to provide better options than the ones that are currently inside of that winner's ad set. In this architecture, we'll get deeper into this, but this is a control and a scale and a test and a variable in one single environment. So all that being said, let's dive into the how and why this works. First off, in Facebook, spend is a meritocracy. Your money will go to where it meets Facebook's business objectives best. And Facebook also tries to align their business objectives. Part of it is to make sure that the advertisers are successful. Now, I see a lot of people saying, well, Facebook's just trying to scam me and take my money. Do you really think it's Facebook's best interest as a business to scam you and take your money? Do you think they even care? My point here is it's in their best interest to provide a positive user experience for their customers. Ultimately, Facebook's product to us as marketers is the attention of their user base. Our job is to take that attention and use it to conduct market research and to create intent so that ultimately we can drive a higher volume of higher quality users into our sales funnels. Now, this is the exact same if you're doing low ticket, high ticket, lead gen. This campaign structure works for you no matter what niche you're in. No matter what your market is, no matter what your budget is, no matter how big your business is, because ultimately what we're going to do is we're going to align our marketing efforts. with how Facebook is designed to be used. Effectively, we're going to start using the tool properly and then adjusting our expectations and our workflow in order to best take advantage of the opportunity that Facebook brings us, which ultimately, again, is market research and intent creation. You cannot scale a brand on intent-based platforms like search nearly in the same way as you can with Facebook. You can't scale a brand on the back of email nearly in the same way as you can with Facebook. Ultimately, though, Facebook will not work if you don't have a successful business, and it amplifies that business. Now, how this actually works is fairly simple. We're using a CBO campaign, so Facebook can literally spend wherever they want, ultimately to drive the best result for them. We're also using only broad targeting. Now, a lot of folks say that broad targeting is a lack of targeting. That's a lie. First off, the ad set, the detailed targeting the audiences, they don't do targeting. They don't determine where your ads go. They just restrict where your ads can't be shown. And why this is really important is to understand that every ad itself is making its own lookalike audience. Let me give you an example. If your ad gets shown to 1,000 people and 500 people like it and 500 people don't, who do you think's going to see the next 1,000 impression? Do you honestly think it's not going to look somewhat like the folks that responded positively to the first 1,000? Wouldn't Facebook want to show content to people that want to see that content? That's in their best business interest. In their best business interest. That was a terrible sentence. Anyway, the point here is, when we become algorithmically aligned with what Facebook's objectives are, and we understand that it makes no sense to try to hack the machine is smarter than anybody could be. It makes no sense to try to undermine the data integrity with silly things like ABO or interest groups, because we're never going to be able to predict where the inventory is today on Facebook. We're never going to be able to predict how to deal with other advertisers. We're never going to be able to predict who responded to what ad and why, and when our second or third or 12th touch that actually gets somebody over the finish line, when that gets done, where are they and who are they? We use CBO because ultimately the idea of using ABO is predicated on the concept that you're smarter than the machine that is looking at billions of people, has data on every bit of their spending behavior and tax information going back over a decade, and sees what people do and has data points numbering in the trillions on every single user, and does so in a dynamic environment with auctions that occur thousands of times every few microseconds. And that's an understatement to the complexity of the platform. If you legitimately think that attribution is broken and that you can't trust the platform, why do you think you could use any of the information that you see to predict the future based on incomplete, out of context data from the past? That makes no sense. Instead, we use a CBO style setup. And in our CBO style setup, we have a winner's ad set, right? And that is effectively performing the function of the control in our test. Those should be our best ads. Those should get the most spend. Those should provide us our best results. Now, we might see one of our dynamic creative tests do really well at a much smaller spend, and that's great. But can it scale? And if it's not scaling in spend, why? Remember, spend goes to where the opportunity is. If every ad makes its own audience and spend isn't going to where you want it to, it means that someplace else is a better investment. Now you might say, oh, I don't know, I'm getting a much better ROAS over here. First off, ROAS is nonsense. Attribution is nonsense. You can't give credit to the very last touch point for the entire customer journey. A nice little example here. If we say that, well, car salesmen sell cars, So all we need to do to be a filthy rich and brand new car company is hire 1 million salespeople. Well, the attribution says they get credit. Why not just invest more there? Now, if that sounds as absolutely ridiculous to you as it does to me, ask yourself, why do you care about attribution on Facebook? Why are you using ABO? And when we're looking at the macroeconomics of the entire situation, ultimately what we're working on and what we're working towards is the blended result of ultimately lifting the rest of our business. So what we're really trying to do is get the best net overall output of results from the platform. And when we use CBO, we're not worried that, well, one ad set's getting a better result today. We don't care. We care, can I predict that this thing is always going to do well? Is it doing well on a regular basis to the point where I can rely on it more than something else? Is it demanding a lot of spend? Is it doing all of that and delivering a very good result in a way that is better than something that I already have in my control environment, which means I would be scaling efficiency? Or is it doing so in a way on an audience that my current control environment is not actually reaching? So we can scale overall growth and reach, which will bring in new types of customers. The point of this is we have to start thinking about how Facebook operates and how macroeconomics work, and understand that audiences don't mean anything. Attribution doesn't mean anything. ROAS doesn't mean anything. All that really matters is, what is the net blended CPA from this platform when I let it go broad? And how do I best use that to amplify my other paid channels? If you found this valuable, please go ahead and subscribe, save, share this with your friends. Ask me any questions that you have on that topic. Now let's get into the structure and execution of the one campaign ad account. Now, we went over this before, but I'll bring it up one more time. Our ad account can look like this. 1 winner's ad set. 2 dynamic creatives designed to produce post IDs to work in that winner's ad set, to ultimately bring us to a total of 3 to 5 active ads within that ad set. And then more dynamic creatives ultimately run while sunsetting the ones that are currently live to make room for them, so that we have better options of where Facebook can spend their money. And we do all of this in a CBO environment. Now, the structure here is fairly simple, and there's a big reason for that. We don't want to be testing 10 things at once. Do you want a really good answer with extreme confidence rather quickly? Or do you want to be testing a bunch of things and then chase the winner on very low data sets and worry about having any confidence in the success at all? The point here is, the fewer variables you have in a test, the higher confidence you can have in the output of that test. If here our test is basically, we have a control environment, our winner's ad set, and then we've got 1 or 2, because you don't even need to be running 2, 1 or 2 dynamic creative tests, assembling, following the 3-2-2 method, no more than maybe 12 to 20 max possible iterations of ads. Now, that's ultimately maybe 24 to 40 additional ads that we're running alongside our winner's ad set, but we all know that the delivery there is not going to be even. We're going to get a fairly hyperbolic distribution among the best possible iterations of those elements. Because remember, every ad is just another web page in Facebook's environment. When we use dynamic creative, that web page is reactive and adapts to each user's needs. And it collates the information from all of the users to ultimately produce the best possible blended output. our goal is to make sure the best possible blended outfit, but for Facebook's business objectives also meets our own. And so the point here is ultimately, we're not trying to hack the machine. We're trying to do the best we can to set up the machine to do all the work for us. Now, chase this down. If you truly believe in interest groups and post IDs and ABO, basically 2016 version of Facebook that has been all empirical evidence says you shouldn't be doing it. If you truly believe in that, then you also have to understand that when you extrapolate that out to the nth degree to understand scale, you're going to start running into a limitation on resources with regards to time, money, creative, the ability to take insight, and the ability to make sense of an ever-growing volume of variables and an ever more complex system. And if you ever want to take a day off, you might go out of business. The point here is, that is the logical conclusion of that thinking. Now, first off, that is extraordinarily undesirable. Second, that's actually not even how you get the best result. And third, that's an incredibly inefficient way to run your business. Now, if you want to run any business and think of your ad account as a business, you have to get really good at understanding, how do I scale the value of my time? It's not about you doing more work, but the work that you do producing a greater force multiplied effect. How do you make the machine stronger and stronger and smarter to do more and more work that doesn't require you at all? That's what Facebook is designed to do. I know, because I work with the engineers to help build it. The point here that I ultimately want to get to is, we're going to be focusing on using an CBO situation. We're doing that with a control environment and up to 2 dynamic creative testing environments. This allows us to, that follow the 3-2-2 method. And this allows us to, A, have extreme insight into why money is going to a certain place. Also, the net output of that effort. For instance, if you've got 10 ad sets, or for that matter, even 10 ads, and that ad set does well today, great. If that distribution isn't the exact same tomorrow and the next 14 days in a row, do you have any idea what action you should be taking? Or are you just going to say, well, this thing got most of the spend most of the time. I think that one's going to be good, but this other one was way more efficient. I'm going to grab that one too. And now you're making human judgment calls. And you can be dead wrong. Because maybe Tuesday was really good, but Friday was terrible, and somebody left a bad comment on Saturday, and now you're looking at the results on Monday morning and have completely inaccurate read on the data. And you also have no ability to understand that because you have way too many variables going on, and you're not running with a control environment. So you don't even know how these things play out in the real world. One of the reasons that we use a CBO with multiple DCTs, and those DCTs have to earn the spend against our control environment, is so that we know not only do these things work well in a test, that test is being evaluated against a baseline. When we have a test campaign and a scale campaign, all we know is what got lucky in the test. And then we risk the entire business with our scale campaign to understand if that thing that got lucky was actually any good. That's a terrible way of doing things. As a matter of fact, if you were to set that up as a scientific study, no legitimate paper would ever publish it because you're violating the scientific method. Actually, the only time you start the scientific method with legitimate, earnest is when you put that winner into your scale campaign and risk your entire business on it, which is a terrible way of doing things. Don't heavily invest in unproven assets. Nobody should ever do that in any facet of business. The execution is fairly simple. We have a control environment of hopefully 3 to 5 ads. Mind you, that 3 to 5 ads is the right number if you're spending $100 a day or if you're spending $50,000. And believe me, I've done all of that for years. And it basically still holds true. Now, the execution here is our dynamic creatives, they have a life goal. Their life goal is to produce new ads for our winners ad set. Their life goal is to produce post IDs to use in our control environment. That's it. Once we are running those tests and we feel confident in the projectability of the outcome, then we can declare that test over. Your test should never run to the Gregorian calendar. Do you think the scientific method legitimately cares about time? Do you think the scientific method actually gives a damn about how some rich people in Italy decided to arrange the way of putting time on a piece of paper according to the movement of the sun? Of course not. So when that test is over, you take the ad out and you put it in your control environment. If it's good enough, get rid of that ad set and you launch a new one. That's really the execution to all this. It's not that hard. And sometimes you don't need to touch something this week. Sometimes you don't have to do any work at all this week on Facebook. I hope that makes sense. And if you have any questions about this stuff, please, again, feel free to comment below with them. Feel free to subscribe, ring the bell so that you make sure you don't miss any of this stuff. Now, let's get into the down and dirty of it all. How do we scale? Great question. We scale in two ways. Number one, we're scaling efficiency. And that is the far more important way of scaling. And if people don't talk to you about scaling efficiency, even in their best efforts, they're not putting your business needs first. Scaling efficiency is all about getting a better result from the platform. Now, often the way that we look at this is CPA. Now, you might get a better CPA by targeting a retargeting audience, but you're going to get a better CPA on Facebook. I can tell you I get a really good CPA on Facebook. Use a targeting audience that only retargets the people that open emails, send out a 50% off sale, and then hit all those people with ads. You're going to get an incredible CPA. You know what else you're not going to get? Any additional revenue. You know who doesn't care about that? Your finance department. Your bankers. Your fulfillment team. None of them care. It's another reason why ROAS is complete nonsense. And we never use ROAS or honestly MER. Because MER is just the same lie that ROAS is, but at a higher scale, so it sounds smarter. And it's pushed by the same people that were swearing by delayed attribution right up until Facebook took away the 28-day click. Now, for those of you who've been following me for years, you know, around 2018, 2017, since then we've been preaching that that stuff is complete nonsense. And we've been building 8- and 9-figure businesses around the world on the back of that. And other people have disagreed and said, well, Facebook just isn't working. Is it not working? It's not using it right. Not my call, just a question. So how do we scale? Well, when we do the dynamic creatives, if we are running a concept in that dynamic creative that is effectively addressing the same type of user, basically focusing on the same targeting audience, because remember, our ads do the targeting. So if our ads appeal to the same types of users, they have the same targeting audience. But it does so in a more efficient way. Maybe one ad is running at a $32 CPA and the other one's coming in at like a 28. That's more efficient. Now, ultimately, what we're getting to here is if you can improve your efficiency by 10%, you get 10% more customers to your store and you get 10% more sales. The fun thing is when you get 10% better efficiency on your Facebook ads at broad, you actually get better search results. You actually get better email open rate. You actually get lower returns and better LTV. Why? Because you're reaching higher quality customers. And because those customers are having a better interaction with your business, you're improving your advertiser score and estimated action rate, which in turn continues to push down the cost per acquisition that you're going to be seeing from your ads. Which means you're scaling your business without having to spend any more money. Fun fact, I took a business from a $60 CPA down to a $12, and the Facebook ad spend from $3,000 a day up to $50,000 a day. We decided to cut back Facebook ad spend by over $30,000 a day. That put $1 million of EBITDA into the business. And we were still making more money than a $50 CPA at $5,000. And the LTV on those customers went up by double digits. The point here is Facebook's job is to ultimately drive a higher quality and a higher volume of customer to your store. Now, the beauty of once you start to scale efficiency, say your target CPA is $50 and you get it down to 45. That means you could theoretically spend 10% more money at a complete loss, and you're still meeting your objective. Now, maybe you don't see any sales attributed to Facebook today. Go take a look at your search results. Go take a look at your site traffic. Go take a look at your email signups and your opens. I bet you they're looking better. And the longer you run that, the better they're going to get. And what this really means is when you scale efficiency and you develop a larger profitable scaling margin, a PSM for your offer, you can spend more money. You can invest some of that margin into scale and growth. Now, we don't spend so much that we can't ever, we pass our CPA targets. But if your goal is at 50 and you're coming in at 45, why not improve it by 5%? Why not push 5% more spend? I'll bet you get a couple more sales. Maybe after you push your spend up from, you're at 45, your goal is 50, and you increase your spend by 5%, maybe your CPA rises like 46.5. Do another 5%. Maybe it comes up to like a 47. Do another 5%. You could do that Monday, Wednesday, Friday until it hits $48, and I'll bet you probably go up by more than 25% in the space of 2 weeks. Now, you might be saying, well, 25% is not that big. But remember, this is a stable, projectable result. It's not immediate scale today that has to drop off tomorrow because you broke everything. This means that your new worst day is better than your old best day. And your average day is better than anything you could have done before you started. That is a win. If you can focus on as small as, say, 2% a day, over the course of a year, you will more than 3x your business. Are you a $600,000 brand that wants to be a 7-figure one? Get 2% better a day. Are you a $4 million business that wants to be an 8-figure one? Get 2% better a day. Do you want to go from 1 million to nearly 20? Do this for a couple of years. And that's on a very reserved projection of 2%. And I apologize, that's not a day, that's a week. If you can do 2% a week, that's 3x in a year. Point here is, ads do the targeting, so you don't need audiences anymore. If you don't trust Facebook data, why are you possibly trying to say, well, I can use it to predict the future based off of incomplete, inaccurate visions of the past? That makes no sense. And are you really testing an ad if it's not being run up against something that it actually has to run up against in market? Or is that just a test to see what you actually start testing? How much money and time are you wasting testing against the Gregorian calendar? Because somebody told you that weeks and days and hours and minutes matter. And that somehow that has anything to do with statistical significance or machine learning. Do you honestly think a random set of ones and zeros gives a damn about the movement of a sun? No. So start using the scientific method. You might have heard of it. It's been used by some podunk fellas like Copernicus, Newton, Tesla, Madame Curie. The point is, if you're not using one campaign and you know about it, the biggest barrier to your success, your decision making. I'll leave you with that. Please, if you love this thing, subscribe. If you have any questions, comment, let me know what they are. Welcome to the definitive guide to creative testing with Facebook ads. We're going to dive into the most popular methodologies and why some of them are really popular and why they're probably not really good for you, why people really love to use them and what you should be doing instead. We're going to dive into the tools that you can be using right now to make sure that you see less stress and more success with more stability and confidence with your Facebook ads while making the work a lot easier and the step-by-step methodology to get that done. And we're going to deep dive into how Facebook uses data, plus how ads do the targeting so that you never have to play the game again of interest groups and lookalikes and retargeting, because the honest truth is you shouldn't have been doing that starting in 2018, and you definitely don't need to do it now, especially if scale, growth, confidence, success is your goal. With that being said, let's get started. One thing, I just want to say thank you very much. I know you could be anywhere on the internet right now and you've chosen to be here. If you want more help, please subscribe, hit the bell, and go to links.facebookdisruptor.com so I can be of more help to you. Let's get started. So, first thing, the most popular methodology people are using right now to test their creative on Facebook is using ABO, ad set budget optimization, and small budgets to test individually built out ads over a set period of time. Now, this makes sense because you're saying, well, I'm letting every ad get a fair shot. And this makes sense because you're saying, well, I'm only going to risk a little bit, and if it works well, I'm going to increase my budget, or I'm going to take it from my test campaign and put it into my scaling campaign. Logically, that makes sense on paper. However, when we break down what we're actually doing, we can see why this is a massive liability to your future. And don't worry, we're going to get into what you should be doing instead really quick. So, to look at it in a different way, what you're actually doing is saying, I'm going to predict exactly what Facebook users want to see. I'm going to invest a small amount of money so I get a little bit of data to see what's working well initially, what gets lucky early. And I'm going to make sure to invest as much or more in bad ideas as I do in good ones. Because let's be honest, if you test 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 ads, odds are the vast majority of them are bad ideas. So if you're only spending 20% of that testing budget on a good idea, how much money are you actually spending on ads that are not only bad performance-wise, but actually also raising your CPMs and reducing your estimated action rate as an advertiser that ultimately hurts your ability to grow everything else that's already working? Because yes, all of that is related. Facebook is evaluating how you behave and your relationship within the platform and how they view you as a business partner to ultimately monetize the attention that you provide on the platform. Facebook gives you the option of getting impressions. They sell you users' eyeballs for profit. Your responsibility is to make sure that that is not a liability to their bottom line and not forcing people to have a bad experience or want to leave Facebook. So when you build out, say, 10 ads and you launch them over the course of a week with, let's say, a small budget, and you're measuring for click-through rate and CPC and all this other stuff, what you're doing is spending probably 80, 90% of your budget on ads that aren't good to begin with. And you're telling Facebook that a bad idea that is a liability to their business model is as important or more important to you than actually making an ad that's any good. Plus, what we do from the next step, if it's working, we're going to raise the budget, we're going to turn off bad ads. You're saying if something gets lucky on a few data points, if it gets 5 sales over the course of a week or 10 sales, or if it does a little bit better, then we're going to spend all of our money there. Now, the honest truth is 2 or 3 is not a good data set. When we're running our testing, we have to understand that we need high confidence in our assets. And the biggest liability here is ultimately that the ads that win in testing when we're using ABO and we're trying to get retargeting ads and prospecting ads, and we're running against different audiences and we're doing all of these different variables. When you spread your dollars so thin that you get very little data on a whole lot of options, what you're basically doing is saying, I am not willing to invest in the development of good ideas that I have confidence in. I'm throwing as much stuff against the wall to see what gets lucky. And then ultimately, can I bet the future of my business on investing as much as possible in what I got lucky early on? You're basically playing a volume game with lottery tickets and trying to put your thumb on the scale. Now, you can be successful doing that. There is a version of success where a C+ or a B- is good for you. My suggestion to you, though, is don't define success as, well, I'm doing good enough. Because honestly, you deserve a lot better than that. And as you continue to test and your CPMs continue to rise and your costs on Facebook continues to grow because you're investing more and more money in ads that aren't good, so you're becoming a larger and larger liability to Facebook and their business model, and they see you as a worse and worse business partner. The only way to overcome that when you follow down that strategy and that path is to make more ads and to test faster. And so you're ultimately testing 10, 20, 30, 40 ads, potentially against different audiences or different landing pages, all spreading those dollars even thinner. So you're getting even lower confidence across even greater amount of variables. Now, the honest truth is that is an unsustainable path, because either you're going to continue to be able to increase your budget, or you're going to have to make more content to take more and more lottery tickets to hopefully be able to pay off. Now, the problem here is, while you can stay ahead of the curve, eventually you're going to run out of time in the day, creatives that you can test, or money that you can invest. It's not a sustainable solution. And while you're doing that, you're also creating a situation where Facebook sees you as a less and less desirable business partner. Plus, you are betting more and more of your business's future on unproven assets that have never been actually able to deliver you a projectable result. Now, no matter who you are, when we're running a test, if we can't predict the outcome, if the outcome isn't predictable, then that test isn't finished. If you get something with 2 sales and something with 5 sales, or the CTRs here is good, or the first time impression rate of this one, whatever, none of those things say, I know week in, week out that this is going to come in at a CPA of X. If you can't say with extreme confidence what the output of that test is going to be, then that test isn't finished. And ultimately, if you're investing $50 on a few ads here and $20 on a few ads there, and you're repeating that process over and over again, you don't have anything at the end of that that says, I know how much this ad is going to run. You, in fact, are creating a system that is wildly unstable, where your costs are going to rise every single week, every single month. Now, how many of you, show of hands, have been seeing a situation where Facebook gets more and more expensive, where it's less and less stable, where you have less and less confidence, and trying to solve problems with audiences instead of creative testing properly? Now, you might think that you're doing the right thing, but each time you apply the solution, the problem gets a little bit worse. And that's because you're putting in a little Band-Aid that ultimately doesn't fix the institutional problem that you're bringing into the system. So to recap on all of this, if you are running creative testing by building out individual posts in an ABO campaign, we're putting in daily budgets and then increasing them on things that work and turning off ads that don't, and moving from a testing campaign to a scaling campaign. All you're doing is working really, really hard to make Facebook less and less stable and make it more and more expensive for you as you present yourself as a greater and greater liability to Facebook's bottom line. That's not the way Facebook was designed to be used. And the few people that are winning there, that are doing that at scale, have two things in common. One of two things in common. Number one, they're running a business that's so successful, they can succeed by running Facebook at a B- strategy. Or two, their version of success looks like something like ROAS or ad spend, not actual business success. So their version of success isn't an honest one. It's a very selfish and myopic and uninformed one. And you need to understand when you're dealing with people what version of success they're using. Now, I hope that makes sense. And if you love this, please feel free to like and subscribe and ask any more questions on it before we dive into the next thing, because I'm ready to go. Now, what you should be doing to run your creative tests is use Facebook's tool to run creative tests, which is dynamic creative. Now, I hear the feedback on dynamic creative all the time is, well, not every ad gets a fair shot, and all the spend goes to one creative, and they say that that's a problem. Well, the honest truth is that's a good thing. We just established how much of a bad idea it is to invest the majority of your budget on things that are liabilities to your relationship with Facebook. If instead you were able to say, I spent 80% of my budget on the thing that was good, instead of 80% of my budget on things that I ultimately turned off and didn't like, that's a much better relationship. When you work on and managing your investment, and you put the majority of your investment into assets that are desirable, that ultimately produce better business results for you and give you a better relationship with your partner, those are things that are ultimately good. So if you launch a dynamic creative test and 80% of the spend goes to one thing, that's awesome. That's actually a good thing. You don't need to test everything because spend in Facebook is a meritocracy. Where the spend goes is what ultimately is delivering the end Facebook user a positive experience. Now, our job is ultimately to say what gives the end Facebook user a positive experience and delivers us a projectable and desirable business objective. If we can use a dynamic creative and we run it for a week or 2 weeks and we know, hey, give or take, every day's in and out, but every week I know this is basically going to come in at $40 or so. Great. If our goal is to come in under 50, that's a win. We can honestly look back at week over week trend data and say, I don't care that I'm unstable on a day-to-day basis with this, because I know that ultimately the output of this thing is good for me. And if it's not only good, but as good or better than the ads that I'm using in my control environment, hey, I can improve my control environment with extreme confidence. Now we have a system developed that ultimately just makes things better on a consistent basis. This will reduce our costs over time. You should be seeing your CPMs drop year over year. My CPMs this year are less than they were last year, less than they were the year before that. Your cost per acquisition should continue to come down, or they should be stabilized at below your target cost, and you should be able to increase budget because you're making ads that are better and better, that have a higher estimated action rate, so you can spend more money. Because remember, what you pay in the auction, your bid, what they charge you, what Facebook charges you for a conversion is a very simple math equation. It's budget times estimated action rate and advertiser score. Now, when you were running a bunch of ABO testing against every single post ID, you were doing two things. A, you were making a worse estimated action rate for your entire ad account, and you were reducing your advertiser score because you were spending more and more money on things that were a liability to Facebook. So not only was each ad having to struggle on its own with very little spend, also, every loser that you had actually made every winner harder to be successful. So you were creating the system that ultimately worked against yourself. And the only way you can overcome that is by working harder, spending more money, and accepting a worse outcome as acceptable. So one of these is objectively better than the other. And the honest truth is there is no data-based and business result-based argument to say that running ads in an ABO by launching a bunch of tests so that every ad gets the same amount of spend and you can make a qualified impression and decision yourself is better than using dynamic creative. That argument does not exist. And that's a stone cold fact and objective truth that we have to accept. Now, the problem with dynamic creative is there's a lot of options, and people often misuse dynamic creative because they were not taught how to do it properly. So I'm going to teach you that right now. One of the biggest things that I use for dynamic creative is what we call the 3-2-2 method. And what this means is we have 3 of one element, potentially creative, and we have 2 of the other 2. So we might have 3 creatives and 2 headlines and 2 primary text. Now, I hear you saying, well, I've got 20 things that I want to test. Fine, we'll get to that in a minute. But if you have more than 3 of any one of those options, and one thing gets all the spend, and the result is bad, do you know that that concept was bad? Do you know that that ad set was bad? Do you know that that test was a loser? Or was the thing that got all the spend a bad idea? Now, if you have 3, it's really easy because you remove that one thing that got all the spend and performance doesn't improve. Hey, you know objectively, move on to the next one. And if performance is good, hey, you don't have to wait through 10 different creatives to get there. So it makes the decision-making binary, extremely high confidence, and super simple. You can train a machine to do it. A monkey with 30 seconds of coffee and a little bit of a training on how to hit a button can do 90% of the job for you. And that's the kind of thing that you want. A idiot-proof, repeatable system and process to create success at scale with easily repeatable solutions. So the point here is when we use the 3-2-2 method, we are able to understand and work our way through very simple tests. Now, honestly, if you have 3 creatives and 2 headlines and 2 primary texts, which, by the way, we don't test descriptions, we don't test CTAs, those are completely irrelevant and we do not need them. That's 12 total ads, right? That's 12 total possible iterations. Now, honestly, out of those 12 total, you could build them all yourself. You probably won't. When you go into the ad set and build them on in your ABO, you're probably picking and choosing the ones that you think make sense, not letting Facebook pick the one that ultimately gives the end user the best result. Instead of letting Facebook do the work for you, you're working extra hard to guess, and that is never going to work for you. At scale, that is always a losing argument. Now, there are some people that run creative shops that will disagree with that because they build very specific ads for very specific things. And the honest truth is, there is blinders put on when you are going into the situation saying, I'm building creative to look and feel a certain way. And when I get it that certain way, it works better than this. Well, yeah, it'll work better if you don't use dynamic creative testing properly and you don't set it up to be successful. Then you're putting the thumb on the scale to make sure that what you're doing is better. And we see this happen a lot, especially with agencies that make their own creative. That being said, what we can do with the 3-2-2 method is make it extremely easy, binary choice. Is this dynamic creative projectable in its outcome? Yes or no? Is that projectable outcome good? Yes or no? And based on that, we can make some very simple decisions. If it's not projectable, we can decide to either let it continue to run, or we can say, hey, look, it's not projectable, but every outcome of it has been bad. I've run it for 10 days, 14 days, and I don't even know what's going to happen. Well, that is actually a projectable outcome. A lack of confidence and consistency and desirable result. Hey, I know that this test is so chaotic, I don't want to run it anymore. That's fine. Don't do that after 2 or 3 days, though. Let it run for 5, 7, 10, 14 days. Understand with trend analysis, working through a weekend or during the week. Don't launch your ads all on a Sunday and say by Friday, you know what's going to happen, because objectively that is going to set up more and more situations which amplify the problems that you're having. Let the data do the decision making, because Facebook's a machine learning platform that's ultimately designed based on trillions of data points for billions of users and going back over a decade on the vast majority of them, plus seeing every single transaction they've ever taken. Why would you not let that machine that is designed to maintain attention and has proven itself to be the #1 tool in the world at doing that? Why would you try to undermine that and ultimately make a decision yourself based off of incomplete data? Because we already are upset on the reporting that we're having, and ultimately trying to react to things that happened in the past and take guesses on small data sets, because you're spending a little bit of money in a lot of different places when you're running an ABO style test. So when we're running a 3-2-2 method style dynamic creative, ultimately we're able to say, is this projectable? Yes or no? Yes, it's projectable. Great. Is that good or bad? If it's good, great. Then we can go in and extract the post ID of the winning concept, put that with our winners, and move on to the next creative test. We can maybe be running 2 creative tests at once alongside winners, or in this case, a proving ground style campaign where all of our best post IDs are. This is actually the foundation of how I build ad accounts that run off of one campaign that can spend easily $1 million a year. I have some that are spending over $1 million a month that are not more complicated than this. Because ultimately, we are investing the vast majority of our resources into content that Facebook wants to see. And we are then saying, this is what you want to see. Is this good for me too? The answer is yes. Great. We're going to move forward with it. If the answer is no, great. We're going to move on. And we're going to continue to do this so that I'm continually producing more and more high confidence, high value assets that I can invest more and more into, because not only am I meeting Facebook's business objectives, because ultimately that's what we have to do here, but we also need to make sure that Facebook's business objective meets our own. So when we create content, we're not fighting the machine, but instead working with it. Now we're in a situation where we are going to be tremendously more successful, and on the back of way less work. Now, how do we get the post ID from that winning ad? Well, it's really easy. Now, one of the biggest complaints I hear about dynamic creative is, well, I don't know all the posts. I can't see the performance. I break down by dynamic element, and I have no information. That's objectively wrong. You can see the spend by element. Great. What's getting 80% of the spend? If the outcome is good, that is the reason the outcome is good. If the outcome is bad, that is the reason the outcome is bad. Or if 2 things are getting 50-50, great. We can use that information when we ultimately look to the preview Facebook post with comments, because that's where we're going to find the post ID of all of the ads that we're running. So when we can hit share in the upper right-hand corner, and we hit share, and then it drops down to Facebook post with comments. We can go there, and you're going to see this ugly URL across the top. It says DCO this, question mark that. Great. But you're going to see in order the ads in the order that they have of estimated action rate. What ads are most desirable for Facebook's bottom line? We can see those ads, what headlines they have, what creatives they have, what primary text they have. And we can then reference back to the spend that we had by dynamic creative element and say, wow, this one has the creative that spent the most, the headline that spent the most, and the primary text was about 50-50. Great. That's an ad that we know is probably responsible for a lot of the outcome of that test. And if we like the outcome of that test, why not take the thing that probably spent the most, that is the highest contributor to that good success, that's probably doing a lot better than the average? Because remember, there are a few bad ideas in there that are keeping that average higher than it should be when we're talking about efficiency. And we can hit the timestamp on that ad where it says created by you on so-and-so date. And when you hit that timestamp, you're going to notice the URL changes. And now you're going to get the post IDs, all of the letters and numbers that come in after the last little slash that we have at the end of that URL. Now, when we look there, we can take that, we can make an ad, we say use existing post, we copy, paste it in there, boom. Now we're promoting the post that's the winner of the dynamic creative test, and we can move right along. Now, you can repeat this process once a week. I don't think you should put it on a timeline, though. Put it on the element of, do I have confidence in the outcome of this test? Do I objectively know where this will end? And if the answer is yes, fantastic. And if it's good and yes, take that post ID, put it alongside your other winning ideas, and then ultimately you've got a system for repeatable success that is only making every ad that you are ultimately spending the majority of your budget on better and better. Now, if you use this inside of a CBO campaign at broad, which is what you should be doing, now your winners are competing for spend against your tests, which means your tests have to not only win in the test, but they have to compete against the winners. Now, I've gone into extreme length before about why running a test campaign and a scaling campaign is a terrible idea, because it completely breaks up the scientific method, and there people are successful at that. But again, that's because their business is so good they can do a bad job at Facebook, or their definition of success isn't actually a business objective one, but instead a misinformed, myopic one. When you're running your test and it has to compete with existing winners, and it wins, your confidence is extremely high. And we want to make sure that we have extremely high confidence so that we can invest in super high value assets, so that we can continue to make every choice that Facebook does on our behalf better and better. And that's the real choice, because we are the manager, they are the employee. We have to give the system higher value assets to make decisions on our behalf. Now, if you like this, please, again, hit subscribe, like, comment if you have any questions. Let's dive into the last bit here. If we are running our ads and Facebook is a machine learning platform, what are we teaching it and how does it work? Well, the honest truth is Facebook is a machine learning platform, which means that what we invest, every impression, every penny, euro, rand that we spend, ultimately is giving the system data. And that data is what makes all of the decisions for us. Facebook looks at what's happened and then tries to find other ways of repeating that or making it better for the end user. And that's the biggest thing here. Facebook isn't aligned against you. And that's what I hear a lot of time. People say, well, it just feels like the machine doesn't want me to win. And that's 100% objectively false. But when you're not aligning yourself towards the success of the machine, don't be surprised when it doesn't work well for you. And if you give an employee a bad set of instructions and you tell it to make really bad choices and your business fails, don't be mad at the employee for something that is squarely your fault. So that being said, the data that we get is extremely valuable. So when we run creative testing with a lot of post IDs and a lot of different ads and a lot of different ad sets at very low budgets, we have to remember our level of confidence in the outcome of any of those tests is extremely negligible. If you are spending 20 bucks, 50 bucks against 4, 5, 10 different post IDs, and you're hoping to make sure that each one gets a decent amount of chance of where we're going to spend, great. Here's the problem. None of those things are actually getting enough budget for you to understand whether the success they had was luck or merited and repeatable. Now, you might be saying, well, I've been doing this for a long time and that's the way it works. Great. You've been doing a C+ or B- job for a long time, and maybe that you were successful with that. But imagine what it would look like if you were doing it properly and you were able to scale your business with confidence and success with stable and projectable outcomes on less and less work. Now, before we talked about if you had 20 creatives that you wanted to run. Now, if you have 20 creatives and we're using that 3-2-2 method talked about earlier, and you are having trouble because you only run 3 instead of 20, you can run 3 of them and then launch the next test of the next 3 and then the next 3. And what you're doing is, instead of spending across 20 ideas at once, you're spending across a couple of ideas at a time. And you're making sure that only the best ideas of those little batches get all of the spend. So you're spending the majority of your money giving Facebook the highest quality data in a very high volume to let you understand whether or not you're meeting the business needs of Facebook, and if when you do meet their business needs, if that's good for you. Which ultimately brings us down to the very last thing here. Ads do the targeting. This is not up for debate. This is objectively true. Every ad is actually a post ID. That post ID is actually a web page. Facebook is measuring the click-through rate, the bounce rate, the stickiness, everything on every web page. And they're ultimately measuring for CRO. They're ultimately measuring for time on site. They're trying to make sure that any user that sees this content is more likely to come back to the page or spend longer on-site the platform, in the app, or on the site. And what that means is when somebody comes to your web page and they do well and they give a response that Facebook deems is valuable, let's say you get 1,000 of them and 500 responded positively and 500 responded poorly. Who do you think is going to see that next 1,000 impressions? Facebook is going to say, well, these 500 people responded well. I'm going to find 500 or 1,000 people that more look like that look like those people, that behave like those people. Because the ad, just like our organic content, is creating its own audience. Every ad makes its own lookalike audience of people that respond positively to it. Now, when you use a targeting audience, a lookalike or an interest group or something like that, what you're doing is saying, I want you to force my ads onto this audience. And you're saying, regardless of who actually wants to see it, regardless of where this ad might actually be delivering a good result, regardless of where I'm going to actually be a good business partner to Facebook and I'm going to get projectable and desirable and scalable outcomes with high confidence. I want you instead to go focus your ads on this spot. And I'm going to pay more money to do that, which ultimately, again, makes your advertiser score worse because the majority of that budget is going towards people that probably don't want to see your ad. What is the overlap of the ad's own lookalike audience and the audience that you've chosen? What happens when you place 3 or 4 of those ads inside of one ad set? Now there's a Venn diagram of where all of those ads want to go. And what is the overlap of that and the audience that you've picked? Is that audience large enough for you to scale? And what I hear most often, people say, well, my lookalike is doing them my broad, so I'm just going to run lookalike. Yeah, it will, because it's only a small section. And when you use it in tandem with broad, that's great. But remember, what you're doing is you're ultimately saying, here's an existing set of data, and I want to only focus my ads on the people who, based on existing sets of data, are likely to respond well, regardless of who my ads are actually being shown to. And what you're doing is when you run that alongside broad, and then you say, well, lookalikes outperform. What you're doing is you're saying, when I cherry pick my result to get a short win today, while making my advertising costs long-term less desirable, and I'm reducing my advertiser score, and I'm hurting the estimated action rate of every single ad by forcing experiences onto people that they don't want to have, and I'm impeding Facebook's ability to deliver people positive experiences because I'm not interested in being a good business partner, ultimately, success gets more and more difficult. And yes, that means broad won't be as efficient as the lookalike because you're investing more and more money into ultimately cannibalizing the success that you deserve. But if you turned off the retargeting, if you turned off the lookalikes, if you ran creative testing with dynamic creative at broad and only escalated the ads that won, you wouldn't need that lookalike anymore. Because remember, the ads have a lookalike audience. Every ad makes its own audience. And if you scale against only the audience that the ads actually want to appeal to, and you're constantly making better ads that ultimately give you a better desired outcome that's stable and projectable, you can scale your business with extreme confidence, much lower workload, so that you see more success and less stress. Ultimately, that's how you're supposed to do creative testing. At the end of the day, there are a million ways of doing the job, and you can succeed doing the job wrong. But there is an objective truth in how the machine works. There are objective facts, inarguable, on tools designed to help you be better aligned with Facebook. It's your choice whether or not you want to reject how the machine works, to disrespect the end user, and work much harder and then struggle, or if you want to give up a losing battle that ultimately you will lose, and in favor, line yourself up with how the system actually works so that you can be more and more successful moving forward. And that's really the choice that you have. Would you rather do things wrong, but it means you have to work harder and harder, and maybe you can get away with it because your business is so good, or your definition of success isn't actually growth in the business? Or would you say, I don't care what it used to look like, I'm willing to do better and better, scale the growth of my business, the growth of my client, while making myself have to work less and less and give myself greater and greater confidence and eliminate all of this noise and instability and lack of consistency in my advertising? That's a choice you can make. But ultimately, if you want to do creative testing on Facebook and you're not doing dynamic creative against broad, you are setting yourself up for failure. That is, again, an objective truth, backed by every single data point that we've talked about, and backed up by the engineering and product team. And believe me, I know I was there at the development of a lot of these tools, and I spent hundreds of millions of dollars trying to prove one way or the other as being right. And every single time that you lean into the machine, you're going to be more successful than trying to cheat it and work harder and harder. You have the choice. Do you want to work and do a good job and ultimately make the outcome of your work better and better so that it's easier and easier to be more and more successful? Or do you want to be right and be smart and ultimately go out of business? Welcome to the definitive guide to broad targeting, the most powerful weapon that very few people actually use properly, and a lot of folks that know what they're talking about haven't started to use yet in a proper way. And honestly, that's not their fault. They've been probably really successful before they had to be any good, or they have really good brands that don't need them to be all that good at making Facebook marketing. But if you want to work way smarter, which means you can work a lot less and actually make way more money using the smartest marketing machine learning platform on the face of the planet, doing what it's exactly designed to do to help you be successful, let's go. So let's get into it. First off, thank you very much for being here. You could be literally anywhere on the internet right now, and it means the world to me that you've decided to take the time to be here and listen to a crazy person scream at the screen. I really do appreciate that. So one, I want to make sure that you know I value your time, and we are going to make this absolutely valuable for you as much as possible. And we're going to get started right now. So the definition of broad, and I see this wildly misunderstood by a lot of people. So broad targeting is, by definition, age, gender, and location parameters placed on an otherwise unrestricted audience. And the reason that this exists is because those are the three parameters that you can place on an audience that does not add to the CPM. Back in the day when I started using Facebook ads and you were starting to add on targeting audiences, they quite literally told you how much extra that was going to cost. Now, certain interest groups or certain credit card company audiences and other things that we would use would say, oh, that's 20 cents more, or that's 50 cents more. And now you're like, well, I don't really care about 20 cents, 50 cents. But this is back when CPMs were like $3. Interest groups today might cost you an extra $5 or $10 to reach people. So one of the things that we're doing is we're understanding at a very elemental level that what we are doing is reaching the most amount of people for the lowest cost. And when we're trying to use a machine learning platform that requires data in order to improve getting ourselves the highest denominator inside of a fraction of impressions is absolutely the path down the line today, next week, next month, next year, that's going to make our marketing efforts smarter. Basically, it's reps. How many times do we get to learn something? Every win or every loss informs the next impression. If you're paying more money to reach people, maybe it's a higher quality audience, but your machine is dumber because you're basically saying you can succeed, but only if you have training wheels and bumpers and you play in a nice safe space. Well, eventually you run out of safe spaces to play. And if you haven't taught your machine how to be successful there, well, you're going to really, really struggle when it comes to being successful on Facebook. So one thing by definition that we have to understand it is age, gender, and location. So you could say women over the age of 35 in the United Kingdom, or you could say men and women 18 to 50 in the United States. You could say men or women, anybody over a certain age or under a certain age. That stuff is okay. By definition, what broad is not, and I hear say all the time, broad is not an adjective. Broad is a noun. Broad isn't, well, I've put together 14 different interest groups, and now I've got an audience that's like 20 million people. That's not broad. That is stacking a ton of things that all cost extra to get a big audience that effectively just means that you're paying way more for something that is just a lower quality, higher cost version of something you could have gotten anyway. Also, broad does not mean I've got a 10% lookalike, or maybe you're whitelisted and you've got a 20% lookalike. No, that's not broad either. That's a lookalike audience, or that's a interest stack or something else. Broad by definition is age, gender, and location. And that is really all you need in order for you to be successful, because there are some very simple truths around how the Facebook platform operates and Facebook's business model. And we'll get to that in just a second, but I want to drive this home. Age, gender, and location are the only parameters you can place on an inclusion side of your Facebook audience that does not raise the base CPM of your daily advertising. So here's another fact, objective truth. You can argue with me all you want. You're wrong, but you can argue all you want. Ads do the targeting. What this means is Facebook wants to show content to people that want to see it. For instance, my shirt says, be nice to dogs. You know who's not going to see an ad for this shirt? Someone who hates dogs, right? If you want to sell cat food to somebody, your ad could say, hey, do you want nice food for your cat? The people that aren't going to see it are people that have expressed they don't like cats. The point here is Facebook cares about the end user experience way more than they give a shit about your business. They don't give a fuck about your business. They care about the end user experience. And so what this means is every ad creates, and I've gotten into debate with other people that did not understand what I was saying and were dead wrong with what they were saying. I don't care if they're Facebook reps and they've been around forever. They're wrong. Every ad effectively creates, as an analogy, its own lookalike audience. And what this means is any post that goes out into the world and gets exposed to 500 people or 1,000 people, Facebook is going to understand who responds positively to that. And even before that ad goes live, Facebook knows the words that are in your ad, knows what's in the picture, knows what's in the video. Like Facebook right now can take a look at my background and say, oh, he's got a Pittsburgh Steelers hat and a terrible towel, a liquid death hat. He's got this shit from IKEA, right? This light right there. And so they know absolutely what it is that's in your video. They can 100%, the AI can identify all of these things. And because you're linking to a page, they've done a crawl on everything on your page and know the metadata. Because they want to know, when I show this very first impression, how do I make sure that I show it to somebody where it doesn't make their experience worse? Because Facebook's business model is keeping people on Facebook as much as possible. Here's something that I want you to understand. Nobody logged into Facebook or Instagram today to admire all of your hard work and an advertisement to burden their experience. You can try to force your ad on people, which is what a lot of people do in interest groups and retargeting and lookalikes and all this stuff. And you might get some early wins, but it's not scalable. And what's going to happen? Your CPMs are going to be over 25, over 35, over 50, over 80, $100 maybe just to reach 1,000 people. And you're like, yeah, but my click-through rates are great. Awesome. You sold 8 things because you reached 1,000 people and it cost you $100 to do it. What if my CPMs are $20 and I can reach 5,000 people and I get 20 sales? Now my click-through rate, my conversion rate is way worse than yours, but I'm also smashing the ATM machine with a baseball bat while you're struggling to rub pennies together because I made 2.5 times as many sales as you did. The point is, you don't do targeting with audiences. So let's break down exactly what audiences really do. Audiences, by definition, exclude people from seeing your ad. Now, remember we said every ad is a post, right? And Facebook knows the kind of content people want to see. So your ad, let's say people see it, right? And they liked it. So here's a little pocket of people that enjoyed the ad. Now, Facebook knows this is the pocket of people that enjoyed the ad, and maybe there's other folks that are about this big that might also enjoy it. Now, let's say you've got 3 or 4 ads inside of an ad set. So you got some over here, you got some over here, you got some over here. Now, you might have an interest group, which, by the way, has no bearing on the fact that somebody actually positively thinks about something. And that's a whole other argument about why interest groups are absolute trash. Facebook has been begging you for years to stop using them, and they're getting rid of thousands of them every month. And the fact that anybody still uses them hurts me a little bit inside of my soul. That's a whole other conversation. Your interest group might reflect everybody over in this little quadrant of my screen, right? Everybody in this little section. 25% of that available audience. Now, here's the problem. The available people who are in that audience that also might respond positively to your ads might be 10 to 20% of the people on all of Facebook that will respond positively to your ads. So you're paying extra to make sure that the vast majority of people who want to see your content can't. And basically, you're paying a premium to be a burden on a smaller group of people that don't care about you and aren't likely to buy But because you're getting a few small wins in a few small places, that's completely not scalable. That means the audience dies. You're going after the next thing and trying bidding hacks and lookalikes and trying all this other stuff to fix the problem. If you have to solve the problem over and over again, you never solve the problem in the first place. So an interest group, much like a lookalike audience, but we'll get to that in a second, an interest group is the worst type of targeting you could use because you're paying extra to prevent the ad from being shown to the people that want to see it, specifically to also burden a whole bunch of other people based on an extraordinarily low confidence data point that Facebook thinks that they might be interested in something because of some websites they've may have been to, because of some words that they may have used, whether that is positive or negative sentiment. So your CPMs are going to skyrocket and your page score is going to go down, and other advertisers are going to win the good impressions of the people that are actually interested, because those people that are ready to buy aren't going to be shown your content because you're not aligning yourself with Facebook's business model. You're a burden to your business partner's bottom line. Why in the fuck would they ever give you premium inventory? Your goals are not aligned with your business partner. Why would they ever give you the leg up? So if you're giving a big damn about your customer, making content that they want to see and letting Facebook find it, and I'm over here sitting on something where I'm saying, I want to only hit people in this audience, and I only want to do this, and I only want to do that, and I'm going to restrict it down to just this little group of people. I'm going to pay $30, $40, $50, $80 CPMs to burden a small group of people. You're going to pay half that or less to let Facebook show those ads to everyone, and the people who are both likely to be a good impression, you get first crack at them for much cheaper than I do because you give a damn about Facebook's bottom line. So you're going to beat me both in the cost of the inventory, and you get first crack at that customer. So if we're paying attention here, for those in the home game, running an interest group is about the worst thing you could possibly do. Now, the other side of this that I hear all the time is, what about lookalikes and bidding models? Great. They can totally work. They are predictive elements. They take a bit of information that you have and say, great, we think you probably have 10,000 folks who want to buy. We're going to focus that down to the 1%, right? So we're going to get down to maybe the 10 or 100 people that are going to buy. What happens when you get those 100 sales? Well, that lookalike stops kind of working if you're only relying on the lookalike. Same thing for the bidding models, by the way. If you're using, cost cap or bid cap or other things, you're going to focus down to just the low-hanging fruit. The problem is if you're not using broad to expand the pie, as you take more and more pieces of the pie, there's less pie to go around. And eventually, when you drain the bucket of all good data and you stop feeding it, there is no more blood in that stone for you to extract. And I think I just combined four analogies into one example, and I hope you're understanding what I'm saying. Those are things we use for incremental results on top of broad. And one of the biggest issues that we see is that folks say, well, the lookalike is working better. Is it? Great. Is it working better for the next year? Is it something that is an always on effort? Or is it something that works really well right now? It's great for a week. It's great for 2 weeks. And after 3 weeks, it kind of stops working. I'm trying something else and it's working on Twitter. Oh, that thing's working with somebody else on Twitter. So I'm going to pivot my thing to target that. And the only reason it works is because you weren't abusing those people recently. You just found a whole new group of people to harass. Doesn't mean it's a better model. Doesn't mean it's a good idea. You just found a new group of people to pay way extra to go harass and then extract all of the value. And then you're going like Baby Huey sitting on everything else to destroy it along the way. And you're working really, really hard to make sure that your business suffers and has very big difficulty in scaling. That makes no sense. But that's also one of the most commonly taught ways of using Facebook ads. And I'm here to help you see why that doesn't work. Now, one of the things that I really want to get to here is the application of this stuff. Because if you make broad work, you don't need to do anything else. And that means you have a much, much greater amount of time and effort and resources to go after bigger, more important problems. And we're going to cover that in a minute. But when we're using broad, CBO becomes exceedingly powerful. And we can go on a very simple account. Why? Because we're not running our entire business model predicated on the idea of just abusing and disrespecting Facebook users and wildly neglecting Facebook's requests and needs from us as a business partner. And we're no longer favoring trying to be smarter than a machine that we have no ability to ever compete with. Look, I'm not trying to be insulting, but just take it like this. At best, you're like a fifth grader who enjoys chess going against Deep Blue. You're going to lose every single time. Maybe you can be successful doing B- work. That's probably because that brand would be successful even if you weren't there. And imagine what it would look like if you could get your entire Facebook daily, weekly workload down to 2 hours, 3 hours. If it took you a couple hours a week to manage Facebook because you decided to stop micromanaging all of your employees and instead work on bigger, more important problems, not only would Facebook be more stable and reliable and profitable, but you would be able to solve bigger, more important problems. And I said, we're going to get there in a minute. But CBO and simplicity, when you figure out how to run your account on just broad audiences, with obviously some exceptions here and there, right? We all have needs. This is an 80% solution for 80% of the people, 80% of the time. And believe me, if you think, well, yeah, I'm the exception. No, you're not. But there are other exceeding needs that might occur because sometimes you might lead to a law of diminishing returns, or maybe you have immediate needs for certain things. Maybe you're running a sale. Please help me. Don't run any discounts to your brand. Like you don't run a retail store. You don't need to run a discount to devalue your brand and ruin your LTV just to pay more money to get less money from your customers. Don't run discounts. The point is, when you figure out how to make broad work, you don't need to worry about audiences ever again. That's actually solving a problem. If you have to figure it out twice a month or constantly rebuild your account, remember that every time you launch a new ad set, every time you build a new campaign, every time you have to make more new ads just to suffice what you have, what you're doing is starting over. You are unable to use the data from the money you spent last week to inform what you're going to do in a month from now, which means you are chasing short wins to keep the machine dumb. And for that privilege, you are working way harder and paying way more money to burden other people. And if that's your business model, please don't be the person that also complains that Facebook doesn't work, because you're misusing it wildly. And look, I don't mean to insult you here, and I understand that, like, hopefully this is eye-opening, because a lot of people were poorly trained and overworked and underpaid by other people that had no clue what they were doing. We're on the third generation of media buyers since, Power 5 was introduced. And honestly, I used to be that super hardworking guy until I did a case study with Facebook. It took me 6 months and over $10 million in ad spend and Facebook ad credits to be absolutely humbled that the machine was better than me. And since then, since 2018, I've been preaching this type of thing because this is how you move forward. Now, what I want to cover also, when we are using broad, this also means the creative testing becomes exceedingly simple, cheap, fast, and easy. Why? Because all you need is to figure out what gap in your ads do you need to overcome with broad targeting and new creatives. One of the biggest mistakes I see really successful and smart people doing to this day is they run an ad for like a week, or they build 4 or 5 different ads, or 20 ads, or 40 ads. They run them for like a week and they pick whatever got lucky, and then they bank their entire business future on putting that into some other campaign and scaling it to the moon. Got it. Fine. I've also covered dynamic creative and one campaign to rule them all strategy, how to spend $1 million in an ad account, and why that is a cripplingly short-sighted way of looking at your ad account. The point is, if you make broad work, you can take a look at those ads. Remember how I said every ad effectively makes its own lookalike audience because it identifies who responds positively to it, and Facebook already knows who those people are before it gets started. And so ultimately every single ad has its own circle. And in fact, you then have a Venn diagram of the audiences that you're populating and that you're reaching and that you're able to communicate with. And Broad presents in a situation where none of those ads are, where you're never paying extra money to make those ads less effective and ultimately hurt your ability to grow as a brand. You've given up the idea of paying extra to work harder to get a worse result, by disrespecting your customer and your business partner as a standard practice. You've given that up. What that means is now creative testing, you can say, do I want to convert this type of customer more efficiently? Or do I want to try to find a new batch of customers? So remember when we said those ads basically have all their own lookalikes and there's a lot of overlap. That's great. If you want to be more efficient in your CPMs and your CPAs, what you could do is you run a creative test to specifically solve the problem of how do I get this ad pitch done better? And if you can make that ad pitch done better, basically you find a better script, a better creative, a better copy, a better headline, something like that that's going to reduce the CPA. Maybe it's just the journey after the click, whatever it is that you're doing. Then what you're ultimately able to do is replace one good option with a better one.